present Derek Nimmo, Clement Freud, Peter Jones and Andree Melly in Just a Minute. And as the minute waltz fades away, here to tell you about it is our chairman, Nicholas Parsons.
Thank you very much. Hello and welcome once again to Just a Minute. And we have four keen and experienced competitors of the game who are going to try and speak, if they can, for just 1 minute on some subject that I will give them without hesitation, without repetition, and without deviating from the subject on the card. And we begin the show this week with Derek Nimmo. Derek, can you talk on my great-uncle Augustus? 60 seconds starting now.
My great-uncle, Augustus, lived in Bayswater when it was not necessarily the wrong side of the park. He was an unemployed organ grinder, but fortunately been left a large sum of money by a distant cousin on the other side of the family.
And somebody has buzzed. Peter Jones.
A repetition of side.
Yes, there was more than one side and you can't repeat the word. So, Peter, correct challenge, you gain a point for that. You take over the subject. 45 seconds to go. My great-uncle Augustus, starting now.
Well, I suppose it really is Derek Nimmo's Uncle Augustus, and of course I know absolutely nothing about it.
Clement Freud has challenged.
Repetition of course.
Did you say of course twice then?
No, of course I didn't.
There are 41 seconds on my great-uncle Augustus, Peter, starting now.
Of course I wouldn't dream of saying...
Derek Nimmo has challenged.
Well, I was a bit premature. It should have been Clay that challenged. But
It should have been Clay, shouldn't it?
Yes,
because... all right, we'll give it to Clay. There's only
I
fair.
don't want it.
37 seconds
challenge.
on my great-uncle Augustus, starting now.
I didn't...
Clay, Derek Nimmo's challenge.
Hesitation.
All right, we'll give it...
It's my uncle anyway.
36 seconds on my great-uncle Augustus, starting now.
Well, he formed a liaison with a chambermaid and one day took her to Skindle's Hotel near Maidenhead, where he was observed by a Mrs. Foppington Green, who reported him to his brother George, who told Mother, who told father.
And Andree Melly got it.
No repetition of who told.
Yes, there was too much telling going on, wasn't there? Andree, you have the subject now, and a point, of course, for a correct challenge, and there are 21.5 seconds left on my great-uncle Augustus, starting now.
My great-uncle Augustus was sometimes known as Uncle Willie, and he had...
Clement Freud has
Sorry,
challenged.
I slipped.
An incorrect challenge, so Andree, you gain a point, keep the subject, and there are 17 seconds on my great-uncle Augustus, starting now.
He had a passion for marshmallows, and every Christmas the great-nieces and nephews gave him packets of this confectionery, and in return received a tip according to what age you were. 5 bob if you had that number of years, 6...
And Derek Nimmo challenge first.
Hesitation.
Yes, because she was trying to alter her flow of words to get the different ones. 2.5 seconds on my great-uncle Augustus, Derek, starting now.
He went to India, starboard out, and married a Mrs. Vindaloo with very hot stuff.
The whistle that Ian Messeder so elegantly blows beside me tells us that 60 seconds is up, and whoever is speaking at that moment, as you probably know now, gains an extra point. Derek achieved it. He's gained a commanding lead at the end of that round. Peter Jones, your turn. Will you talk now on the subject of what I find a bit tricky? That's what Ian's thought of. Will you talk on it? 60 seconds, starting now.
Well, I find it a bit tricky to come here and talk about any subject without repeating myself, deviating from it, or even hesitating. But I've discovered that if you can speak and don't care whether you bore the living daylights out of everybody and just go on pouring out word after one after the other,
Andree Melly.
hesitation.
I disagree. No, he did very well. Yes, there was
Loud as loud.
No, he kept going with stumbled over a very difficult phrase, kept going. I disagree with the challenge, Peter. You've got another point, and you have 36 seconds on what I find a bit tricky, starting now.
And I can, I suppose, describe this palatial building in which we are situated. Hello, Iris. Good heavens, I've just seen someone I know in the
Andree Melly's challenge.
audience.
Deviation.
What?
Iris is not a bit tricky, I know
Oh,
very
she
well.
might be.
I agree, Andree. I don't quite know what this palatial building has got to do with what I find a bit tricky. So I'm going to give that one to you, Andree, and you have a point for a correct challenge. 29 seconds on what I find a bit tricky, starting now.
Standing on one leg with your right arm tied behind you at the top of a telegraph pole eating a bowl of spaghetti is a bit...
Peter Jones.
Deviation. Must
What?
be, mustn't it? I mean, it's practically perversion.
It might be perversion, it might be worse. It's still jolly tricky. More than a bit tricky. Impossibly tricky. Andree, I disagree with Peter's challenge. You have another point, and there are 21 seconds on what I find a bit tricky starting now.
Is what I find a bit tricky, but it can be done. If you lift the said object to your lips, open your mouth wide and sloop it down, it is no longer as tricky as it seemed.
Peter, Derek Nimmo challenge first.
Hesitation.
Yes, I agree, Derek. 6 seconds on what I find a bit tricky starting now.
What I find a bit tricky is wearing a dickie when I haven't a shirt at all. You can hold it down, but it causes a frown and covers you. I don't know the rest of it.
Once again, Derek Nimmo was speaking when the whistle went, and
Made it up.
so he gained that extra point. Andree, your turn to begin. The subject is my cat. 60 seconds starting now.
My cat is white and called Cleopatra, Cleo for short, and very strange in her habits. She prefers dog food and has been heard to growl and very occasionally bark. She had 3 kittens just lately, did manage to feed them, and then took no notice at all, so isn't very maternal. We've had her spayed, I think it's called, don't know how you spell it. She was purple all round the middle of her tummy, and
Derek Nimmo has challenged.
Hesitate.
Oh, yes, a definite hesitation. She thought of the spade and paused. 31 seconds on my cat. Derek, starting now.
My cat is called Great Uncle Augustus, after a relation that I once had, who formed a liaison with the chambermaid.
Peter Jones has challenged.
Repetition
Of what?
of the previous subject.
Yes, but you see, he hadn't used the words, and that's the
He
repetition of
can't
words.
go on talking about this guy who was
Well-
bad enough for the first minute. He can't go on doing it each time we come.
Well, Peter, he can. As long as he uses the words, doesn't use the words twice in any particular round, he can say whatever he likes in this game. So an incorrect challenge, 25 seconds, Derek, on my cat, starting now.
My cat was Siamese, in fact, and I once paid a special visit to Thailand, hoping to find its forebears. The interesting thing was that although I landed in Bangkok and went far north as Chiang Mai, not once did I see a cat of this particular species. I saw Persian, and I even saw Manx, but not for one moment.
Clement.
Who did that?
Hesitation.
Yes. 6 seconds, Clement, on my cat, starting now.
My cat is white and is known as Cat, unlike my dog who barks at the mail long before the postman.
On this occasion, Clement Freud was speaking when the whistle went. He gained that extra point, and he's surprisingly in 4th place at the end of that round. Peter Jones is in 3rd place, 1 point behind Andree Melly, but Derek Nimmo has a very definite lead. Clement Freud, your turn to begin. The subject, how I remember names. Can you talk on that subject? 60 seconds, starting now.
I remember names because I have a particularly good memory, but there is a book currently on the market which is called How to Remember Names, and is written by a man, if the cover picture is anything to go by, who is a raving lunatic with black hair. And his theory is that when you go to a party and someone says, "This is Mr. Hinkelbocker," you think of a Hinkle and remember it each time you meet him further during the evening. And all I can say is that he must go to some very strange gatherings, because I've never met anyone called by that appellation in the entire party-going career.
Peter Jones, challenge.
Party-going.
Party.
Party-going.
I'm going to lie. There was 2 parties. 20 seconds, Peter, for you on how I remember names, starting now.
Well, I always try to associate them with a particular thing. Like, for instance, Parsons, I try to remember by thinking of the church. I'm quite apt when I see him next to say, "Hello, Mr. Bishop," or Vickers, or something
And
like
Andree
that.
Melly,
No,
challenge.
and a hesitation.
I think I'll let you have that hesitation, Andree, and you have 7 seconds on how I remember names, starting now.
I'm very bad at remembering names and inclined to call people Love, which they don't like, Darling being a bit too actressy, and some...
Andree Melly, speaking then when the whistle went, gained the extra point, and she's moved forward, and she's catching up Derek Nimmo, who's still in the lead. Derek, your turn to begin. The subject, things I collect. Would you talk on that for 60 seconds, starting now.
I collect particularly Roman and Greek earthenware and Staffordshire pottery, which I find particularly attractive.
And Clement Freud is challenged.
Repetition of particularly.
Yes,
And it
50
was very
seconds for
boring as
you.
well. I mean, particularly boring.
50 seconds, Clement, for you on things I collect starting now.
Things I collect tend to be what I can put in my kitchen: herbs and spices and condiments, sugar, salt, potatoes, rice, marjoram, basil.
Peter Jones is challenged.
I can't believe that he collects sugar. I mean, beyond belief.
I've got a very good collection.
I'm inclined to believe you, Peter. Somebody might buy sugar to use
He's
to cook.
hoarding sugar. That's quite a
Hoarding
different thing.
sugar.
They don't collect it.
But to collect it, yes, good challenge, Peter. 39 seconds on things I collect starting now.
I am apt to have a mania for collecting things. Anything that I find I've got two of, I want to possess more. And this applies, for instance, to walking sticks. I have about 6. The problem is finding somewhere to put them. I've decided to hang them on the wall like pictures, one above the other, vertically. And, of course, the house isn't quite tall enough for this, so I've made it...
Oh, Derek, you rotten thing.
Well, I laughed and then he hesitated.
I
That was my
Foul.
new secret weapon. I think.
Foul.
Let's try it again.
All I can say to the others, think of your own secret weapons and see if you can achieve the same results. Derek, yes, you achieved it. And there are 13 seconds for you on things I collect starting now.
Things I collect include secret weapons such as Heinkels, and I often find that put on a wall end to end.
Peter Jones is challenged.
Heinkels, if he does collect them, which I doubt, are not secret weapons.
But
They're
end to end.
aeroplanes.
End to
Yes,
end.
but end to end
He
is very
didn't challenge
repetitious.
on that one, did he?
What?
He didn't challenge on repetition. It was.
Well, I am. I'm
Heinkels.
on deviation, which is...
Yes, put an aeroplane on your wall end to end is
Didn't
very
say that.
devious. Very devious indeed. 5 seconds for you, Pete, on things I collect starting now.
I mooch around looking in rubbish dumps, trying to find works of art.
Derek challenged. Derek, you challenged
It was
before the
repetition
whistle.
of fine, actually.
Yes, you were finding before. Very well done, Derek. There's half a second on things I collect starting now.
Messerschmitts.
So Derek increased his lead at the end of that round with a few points, including the one for speaking when the whistle went. And now Andree, Melly and Peter Jones are equal in second place, and Clement Freud is still in fourth place. Peter, your turn to begin the subject. After things I collect, things I throw away. Probably the same things you collect, after having heard the list. But would you talk on the subject? 60 seconds starting now.
Well, I always throw away all the circulars that come through the letterbox. And I've had a long war with one firm of American magazine people who've been sending them down the years to my house. And I've written to say that I passed away some years ago. There's no point in it. I had my wife send them a letter. What?
Andree Melly challenge.
There were 2 years there.
When?
There were down the years and some years ago.
Well done. I'm glad you were listening. 33 seconds for you, Andree, on things I throw away, starting now.
Old fish bones, potato peelings, things from Clement Freud's kitchen that he's finished with go into the rubbish dump as quickly as possible, or sometimes the compost heap, if suitable. Things...
Peter, Clement Freud.
Hesitation.
Yes, I agree with that one. 21 seconds for you, Clement, on things I throw away, starting now.
Things I throw away tend to be from my kitchen and are potatoes and rice, sugar, basil, roses.
Andree Melly has challenged.
and the deviation, because if he was collecting them, he couldn't be throwing them
Now
away.
I'm throwing them away. I'm done with them.
It's a good try, Andree, but I mean, after all, you can throw away the things you also collect, can't you? 13 seconds, Clement, on things I throw away, starting now.
Things I throw away starting now are cats and dogs because I don't really care for pets very much. And children, wives, uncles, and particularly my great-aunt Augustine.
Andree, your turn to begin. The subject, people who send me flowers. Would you talk about them? 60 seconds, starting now.
People who send me flowers are very special, charming, delightful members of society, and I'm sure that Derek Nimmo, Peter Jones, and Clement Freud would like to join this select community. Roses...
Derek Nimmo has challenged.
Deviation, I wouldn't.
You can be as rude as that and the audience laugh. Lousy lies. I'm not going to allow the challenge. So, Andree, you have another point and you have 46 seconds on the subject starting now.
Apart from the gentleman on my left, roses, freesias, lovely frilly-type flowers are what I like. I don't go for orchids and lilies and the rather waxy type. So it's...
Peter Jones challenged
types
first.
in
Yes, type.
There were
Yes.
two types, weren't there? Yes, Peter. There are 34 seconds on the subject of people who send me flowers starting now.
I was very touched the very first time I won.
Clement Freud has challenged.
Repetition of very.
Oh, no,
Very
you must have
touched the
misheard
very
it.
first time.
It's an echo in the room.
31 seconds, Clement, on people who send me flowers starting now.
People who send me flowers usually do so for an ulterior motive. People who send me flowers come in all colours, shapes, and sizes.
Derek Nimmo has challenged. Why? You're trying to work it out now.
Well, I was really.
Yes, I can see
it was repeating the subject, so it didn't count. So.
Yes, I know. And just for those who may not know at home
flowers.
or on the other parts of the world who listen to the programme, you are allowed to repeat the subject at least 3 times. Clement, an incorrect challenge, another point to you in 10 seconds on the subject starting now.
An awfully nice woman who stayed in a hospital in Hatch End once went to a florist shop to purchase a bunch of daffodils and 1 hyacinth.
Well, Clement Freud, talking about his private life again, managed to get a lot of points at the end of that round, including, of course, the one for speaking when the whistle went, and he's now moved into second place, only 1 behind Derek Nimmo. Andree is only 2 behind Clement, and Peter's only 1 behind Andree. So it's all very close, and they're all very much behind. Andree. The subject is back with you, Clement. It's your turn to begin. The subject is convictions. Can you talk on that for 60 seconds, starting now?
Convictions is something that I have a lot of. The first one at the age of 9 for aiding and abetting. And convictions, to put it another way, is something the chairman has very little of, in that he doesn't even possess the courage of his lack of convictions. That went rather well, didn't it? Didn't you think that went well?
Yes, it did, but you did pause. You sort
Well,
of waited.
I was expecting the anti-Parsons brigade to burst into spontaneous applause.
But don't you realise...
And they're not in tonight.
There was a sharp intake of breath in row 5.
Yeah.
But apart from that, really nothing. I think it was an intake of breath.
You don't realise you've built up a very big fan following with your manner, Clement. But whoever had challenged then after the awful things you said, I would have allowed it. But actually it was a very legitimate challenge of hesitation to Peter Jones, and 41 seconds, convictions starting now.
One of them, I remember, the magistrate said £3 or 30 days. I was new to police courts. I said, I'll take the £3.
What a pity, Peter. 33 seconds on convictions with you, Clement, starting now.
One that I will always remember is of a leper in Brighton who wanted to get to Hove but didn't have the necessary bells with which to proceed down the promenade in an easterly direction, which some people thought should have been north. And so moving the people from side to the other end of the...
Andree Melly has challenged.
There were 2 people saying
Yes, perfectly correct, Andree. And you have 9 seconds on convictions starting now.
My strongest conviction is that Clement Freud, in that long story, was somehow going to prove that he was still keeping to the subject, and that's why I had to challenge him on...
Andree Melly got a couple of points, including 1 for speaking when the whistle went, and now she is in second place. Clement Freud and Derek Nimmo are equal in first place, and it's a very close contest with Peter not far behind. And Derek Nimmo, your turn to begin. The subject, getting in a jam. Can you talk on that? 60 seconds, starting now.
Of course, black currant is my absolute favourite, and I rush down to Hartley's and climb into a great barrel or butt, and then I plunge into the sticky mess below, licking my fingers as I go, scraping squadrels of the muck and putting it through...
Peter Jones has challenged.
Repetition of squadrels.
Well, that's one of the most devious tries I've heard for a long time.
Well, what is it, for goodness sake?
I don't know, but it's a good word to think up when you can't think of a...
Yeah, but you have to speak English or some other known language. You can't.
That's sort of a Derek Nimmo type English word, which...
Oh, you can't allow that, Nicholas.
I'm going to allow it.
There's someone who's already about 14 points ahead of everybody else,
No, he's
and
not.
he's using words that no one has ever heard of.
I don't know. Lear thought of some beautiful words that are not in the English dictionary.
He never played just a minute.
Lewis Carroll had a few as well, and we accept those. We'll accept squadrels. Getting in a
minute.
jam. 39 seconds, Derek, starting now.
I was driving down Oxford Street the other day, and I saw a great squidgle of traffic coming towards me. There were buses
Peter
and
Jones.
lorries.
Challenge,
Repetition
sure.
of squidgle.
Yes.
No, that's not. There were squadrels. This was squidgle. Not repetition.
Squidgels, yes, but you can have squadrels of jam, but you can't have squidgels of traffic.
Why not?
Because it doesn't sound right. Peter, you have 33 seconds on getting in a jam, starting now.
Well, there was a lot of uffiters and barsitiders where I was on the good side, and you played nuncampader, the Bilargochush.
Clement Freud is challenged.
Hesitation.
Yes, you see.
Hesitate. I did hesitate, yes.
If you try and think
Yes.
up too many new words, you're bound to fall down. 24 seconds, Clement, on getting in a jam, starting now.
Between the hours of 8:30 and 10 in the morning, and especially after 4:30 in the afternoon.
Andree Melly, challenge.
2:30s.
I didn't say 2:30, I said 4:30.
Yes, but there were 2:30s. So Andree has another point. There are
Yes,
9 seconds,
that's
Andree, on
right.
getting in a jam, starting now.
If you challenge people on words which aren't in the dictionary, you can get in a jam, as we have just seen with Mr. Peter Jones over there.
Clement Freud is challenged.
Deviation,
Why?
we've heard it.
And we've also seen it because Andree was here witnessing it. So she's entitled to say, as we've just seen over there. And so there are 3 seconds for Andree on getting in a jam, starting now.
Never challenge Nicholas Parsons or...
Clement Freud is challenged.
Repetition of challenge, I'm afraid.
Yes.
Yes.
Oh, yes, yes,
Yes.
yes.
How clever you are, Clement, because I must tell you now, this is the last subject, and your clever thinking, your quick buzzing has got you in with 1 second to go, and you're now in the lead, and you have 1 second on getting in a jam, starting...
I'll try anything.
And I knew you would, that's why I paused.
Extrasensory perception.
I knew you would, and that's why I paused. So, Clement, that challenge came in before I said now, so we don't allow it. You have 1 second on getting in a jam, starting now.
Getting in a jam.
And for those of you at home who thought your sets had gone dead for a moment, it was only just all of us pausing for a change. We have now to finish this edition of Just a Minute. So I'll give you the final score. Peter Jones, with much aplomb and tremendous shine and wit, did extraordinarily well, but did finish in 4th place. We had 2 equal people in 2nd place. That was Derek Nimmo and Andree Melly. Derek just lost the lead at the end, once again, to this week's winner, Clement Freud. Hope you've enjoyed this edition of Just a Minute. From all of us here, goodbye.
The chairman of Just a Minute was Nicholas Parsons. The programme was devised by Ian Messiter and produced by Bob Oliver Rogers.
we present Kenneth Williams, Derek Nimmo, Peter Jones and Sheila Hancock in Just a Minute. And as the minute waltz fades away, here to tell you about it is our chairman, Nicholas Parsons.
Thank you. Thank you very much indeed. Hello and welcome once again to Just a Minute. And once again, we have 4 of our regular competitors who are just about to do battle in this verbal battle of wits. And try and speak, if they can, for just 1 minute on some subject that I will give them without hesitation, without repetition, and without deviating from the subject on the card. This week, we're going to begin the show with Derek Nimmo, and the subject is my dustbin. So, can you talk about your dustbin, Derek, for 60 seconds, starting now?
My dustbin is a source of constant fury to me. I'm all the time ringing the Kensington Refuse Department to complain about it, because they will come along and they decant it into great big tea chests and everything falls out of it, and the refuse collectors then sort of dig around inside and select various things. They'll pick up some leaves, say that's garden rubbish, we don't take that, and then they'll take bricks out and put those on one side and they say that's building refuse, we won't take that away either. And all the time one's involved in these quite senseless battles, and you ring up and say, this is a load of old rubbish, and they say, I know it is, and that's why we're here. But sometimes, on a cool June morning, I go down, very quietly down the cellar stairs to look at my dustbin, and I give it a coat of pale yellow paint, and write upon it, in letters of pink, the following message. Whosoever
Sheila Hancock challenge.
Hesitation.
Yes, as well as the fact they were very generous, because you did say take 3 times.
He said refuse ever so many times.
They go down. I don't know why they were so generous. It's a correct challenge, which I agree with. So she gains a point. She gets the subject of my dustbin, and there are 5 seconds left, Sheila, starting now.
My dustbin's name is Ellie Jane. It is my daughter, and if there's any food left over...
Well, as you probably know, whoever is speaking when the whistle goes, which tells us, by the way, that 60 seconds is up, gains an extra point. It was Sheila Hancock, and she's the only one to score any points at the end of that round. She has 2. Kenneth Williams, will you begin the next round, please? The subject, oh dear, I've just seen what it is. Lust. Kenneth, can you talk on lust for 60 seconds, starting now?
I'm ill-qualified to discuss it.
Derek Nimmo has challenged.
Foolish hesitation.
There was no hesitation. I stopped. The great fool.
The subject, Derek, now is with you, because I agree with your challenge. There are 56.5 seconds on lust.
This is something we must try to spend all our lives conquering. I know I have coal baths.
Sheila Hancock has challenged.
Deviation, you speak for yourself.
What are you doing?
You said we must all try to spend all our lives conquering it.
You don't.
No.
Have it off everywhere.
If I can speak to the subject, I will explain.
Sheila, you have another point and 50 seconds on lust, starting now.
I think lust is a very healthy emotion. It doesn't have to be taken.
Derek Nimmo has challenged.
Deviation, I don't.
Well, it doesn't matter.
Well, I didn't say we did.
That is your opinion, and opinions
it was my
don't
opinion
count.
the first time.
She was not deviating from the subject on the card of lust, and she has 46 seconds with it now, starting now.
Because without it, possibly, men would achieve very little. It doesn't have to be taken, you know, in the sexual connotation. You can...
Kenneth Williams has challenged.
Deviation is this word as connotation. She must mean connotation. Connotation doesn't exist.
Yes, but when you have to keep going... Kenneth, when you have to keep going under great pressure, with Kenneth Williams just ready to pick you up on pronunciation of words,
Let
Peter
him have it.
Jones trying to pick you up on other things, and Derek Nimmo trying to pressurize her on everything under the sun because he sits next
You
to her.
can't give it to him. He's already told us that he hasn't anything to say on the subject.
Exactly.
So Sheila keeps the subject, and there are 37 seconds on last, Sheila, starting now.
Anyway, it gives you a lovely, tingly, good to be alive feeling. I often feel it when I watch men digging the road.
Kenneth Williams has challenged.
This is just developing into a load of filth about her impulses regarding all these men she sees digging in the road.
Actually, if that is your challenge, I have to give it against you, because you pressed your buzzer before she said men digging in the road.
Well, as long as I'm earning her points, that's all I care about.
30 seconds with you, Sheila, on lust, starting now.
Their lovely brown, sweaty, shiny backs leave a lot to be desired. I also lust, that is, I desire very strongly.
Derek Nimmo has challenged.
Does repetition desire?
Yes, that is true, you did. So, Derek, you have a correct challenge at last, and there are 20 seconds left on lust with you, starting now.
It is often thought by many people, if they take this question in any way seriously, that this is not something which human beings should find entirely desirable. Now, as for the water beetles, they're all right.
Peter Jones has challenged. Why?
Deviation.
Why?
Because he's talking about water beetles. And that's not only a different subject, it's a different week.
I think the audience applause tells us that they feel you have justified your challenge. You deserve a point, and you will have it and the subject with 5 seconds on lust, starting now.
Regarding lust, I go along with St. Augustine, who prayed thus, O Lord, make me pure, but not yet.
And St. Augustine didn't have someone blowing a whistle just as he got to his...
No, I know, he wouldn't have come.
He'd have timed
Anyway.
it better, wouldn't he?
Yes.
So, but anyway, Peter, you get a point for speaking when the
thank
whistle
you very
went,
much.
and you moved into second place alongside Derek Nimmo. But there's obviously
Well, we can't choose the company we keep.
You just left the company of Kenneth Williams. You were both on North before.
Yes, we were getting on quite well here.
And Sheila Hancock's undoubtedly in the lead, and she's going to begin the next round. And the subject, we're going to go through all this 7 deadly sins. Sheila, the next subject is pride, that Ian Mester's decided we should use. Will you speak on this one for 60 seconds, starting now?
This is another thing that I think in small amounts is desirable, for without it men have no dignity. In fact, one of the saddest things that happens to people who take an excess of drugs or drink is that they lose their pride in their appearance and their life and begin to become shabby and unattractive. I suppose because they don't care anymore.
Kenneth Williams
It's
has
awfully
challenged.
boring, isn't it? Really.
I didn't think it was. I thought it was very beautifully put. And I thought she had made a very
Some
fine
flowers
point.
next.
Sheila, you have 34 seconds to continue on pride, starting now.
My dad was excessively proud of me, but possibly because he spent his childhood in Italy. He had a very over-emotional way of expressing it, and I will not be put off by Kenneth Williams. I remember one particular occasion.
Peter Jones has challenged.
Deviation. She's talking about Kenneth Williams.
And what was the challenge? I didn't
It
hear
was
Pete.
my pride that was making me say, I will not be put off by Kenneth Williams.
Yes, well, I agree.
And pride goes before a fall.
Brilliant!
I think the mere fact that she kept going while Kenneth Williams was doing the most ghastly antics on the other side, she more than deserves a point for that challenge of Peter Jones. So she keeps the subject with another point awarded. 17 seconds left, starting now.
And I remember him on the first night when I'd had a moderate sort of success, grabbing the impresario by his lapels, weeping all over him and telling him how proud he was of me.
Derek Nimmo has challenged.
Repetition of proud.
Yes, pride is the subject, I'm afraid, and you used the word proud before. So that was a correct challenge of Derek's. 5 seconds with you, Derek, on pride, starting now.
In Nairobi Game Park in 1904, I saw a pride of life.
Kenneth Williams has challenged.
Deviation. I don't want to hear about Nairobi.
You don't want to hear about anything.
You don't hear about anything you should have said.
Well, I haven't said anything for ages.
Well, your time will
Ludicrous.
come.
I come all the way here from Great Portland Street. You just made a laughing stock.
You only got about 3 seconds, too.
Well, that'd
even
be
if you
lovely.
let
I
you
could
have
manage
it.
that.
What happened at King's Cross? Have you...
No, I left there ages ago. Do you want the details?
4 seconds with you, Derek, starting now.
I do think it's terribly important to keep a pride in your appearance, to have a nice, neat tie on every morning and a clean shirt and your suit well...
Derek Nimmo was in speaking when the whistle went. He gained the extra point, and he's got quite a few in that round. He's moving up very quickly on Sheila Hancock, who's still in the lead. Peter Jones, third place. Kenneth Williams in fourth place, and Peter Jones to begin the next round. And we'll be continuing on the subjects of vanity. So from lust to pride to vanity, Peter, your turn to begin. 60 seconds starting now.
Vanity of vanities, all is vanity. Now, I was so moved by that I would like to repeat it, but I won't.
Kenneth Williams has challenged.
Deviation is a complete lie. He wasn't moved at all. He's just saying it.
Yes, I was.
Well, if you were moved, why didn't you get up?
The thing is, that's an impossible challenge on which to make a decision, to say he wasn't.
I know, I'm
moved.
only trying to gain point.
I know you were. So, as I cannot make a decision, I think I would have to give it against you and say Peter has 52 seconds to continue with vanity starting now.
This is something that one does often associate with actors, and it's my own particular vanity to believe that I don't suffer from it. Other people, of course, try to get larger billing, and they're very concerned with the size of their names on the marquee of the theatre, and they, with great pride, display their theatrical notices and any references to them that are made on the radio or television, in newspapers, are referred to endlessly by them in pubs and other places where performers meet.
Sheila Hancock challenge.
Hesitation and deviation. There aren't many actors like that. I don't know any.
Oh, I don't know. There's quite a few. But what amused me was, and I felt that Peter was teetering on the edge of hesitation. We were all, did you feel we were all like that?
Well, I
yes.
was.
All right. I agree with your challenge, Sheila, of hesitation. There are 12 seconds on vanity with you now, starting now.
Vanity, I suppose, is an excess of pride. And women are encouraged to do this by stupid magazines which tell them that the appearance is all important.
Peter, you challenged.
Yes.
What was the challenge?
Well, I challenged on the basis that I don't know any more women like this than she knows actors like the people I was talking about.
So why are you challenging?
Because, well, the same reason she challenged me.
But I won it on hesitation.
Yeah,
All
but
right.
she won on hesitation. It was nothing to do with deviation. So, Peter, this is a wrong challenge. So, Sheila, you keep the subject, and you have literally 1 second left on vanity, starting now.
Vanity cases are for keeping your makeup.
Derek Nimmo, we'd like you to begin the next round, and the subject is why I don't live in King's Cross. So I'll give you a second to write it down, because it's quite a long one, and so you have 60 seconds on why I don't live in King's Cross, starting now.
I really have little idea why Nicholas Parsons doesn't live in King's Cross. I imagine it's because he's trying to find a little place in Great Portland Street near to Kenneth Williams, of whom everybody, I'm sure, in this whole auditorium today would like to live terribly close to, because what a more amusing fellow could you ever hope to meet than dear old Ken with his elfin youthful features, always good for a jolly laugh, the life and soul of every party that you've ever been to. No pride, no vanity, no lust in that dear fellow. You, oh goodness.
I enjoyed your performance. I think they appreciate your remarks, but long before you said all of them, Sheila Hancock had challenged you.
Oh, Lord, I can't remember what. Deviation, because he was talking about Kenneth Williams, not why you or he didn't live in King's Cross.
But Sheila, we've often, in previous series, we've established that, quite without any shadow of doubt, that Kenneth Williams did at one time live in King's Cross. So it was quite natural that he should talk about King's Cross and Kenneth Williams in the same context. So I disagree with the challenge. Derek has a point. Why I don't live in King's Cross is still with you, Derek, and there are 36 seconds left, starting now.
Because to live in King's Cross today would be a place of infinite sadness when my thin friend is now in Shaftesbury Avenue, giving his all. How empty the world would be to walk along those lonely streets and not to see that fellow looking at you. I'm going to raise a great blue plaque.
Peter Jones challenged before your great blue something came up. Wait, what was it?
Repetition of fellow.
Yes. No, you said of that thin fellow, and then that fellow...
No, I didn't. Thin.
No, that fellow earlier.
Friend.
The word you say was friend that I... And the
It
other
was
word
fellow and friend. I'm sorry. I slightly misheard as well. He hasn't got very good diction, but don't worry about it. Derek, you have another
Anyway,
point.
it did disrupt his flow, so that was all right.
Yes. There are 19 seconds on why I don't live in King's Cross starting now.
There are other reasons, because cabbages don't grow anymore in King's Cross, nor...
Sheila Hancock has challenged.
I'm quite sure somewhere in King's Cross cabbages do grow.
Yes, and it's possible to grow cabbages in King's Cross.
Yeah.
You mustn't assume just
But
because
the market gardens have all gone.
I know,
these
but
days.
you mustn't
but
assume
there's
It's
the
not
odd
what it
cabbage.
was in Kenny's day.
You're telling me, my goodness, when I think back on the gardens that used to abound.
And I once lived, my first flat was near King's Cross as well. Peter Jones, what have you got to get?
Well, we don't want to hear your life story. Want to get on with the game.
Yes, well, all right.
Am
Sheila
I,
has won a point, and there are 14 seconds
Yeah,
left
but you
for
just
why I
started to
don't
tell
live
us
in
where
King's
you
Cross.
were
Sheila,
born and
starting
all that
now.
dreary
Well, the
rubbish.
reason I don't live in King's Cross now is because I did when I was a kid, and I doubt very much whether they'd have me back. However, I did enjoy it while I was...
Sheila Hancock was speaking when the whistle went once again, and it increased her lead at the end of that round. Peter, your turn to begin. The subject is my advice to this audience. 60 seconds. Would you talk on that starting now?
Kenneth Williams just whispered in my ear, go home. Anyway, I'm not going to give you that advice, but it would be much easier if I could speak to each of you one at a time, because I don't believe in giving blanket advice to large crowds of people, because obviously what would suit one person would not necessarily suit another.
Kenneth Williams has
Two
challenged.
suits.
2 suits, yes. And you can't have the same suit for both people. 35 seconds with you, Kenneth, after a correct challenge on my advice to this audience starting now.
My advice to this audience was not what Peter Jones has told you. Mine is attend.
Derek Nimmo has challenged.
Hesitation.
I know, but he was pulling himself up to give this magnificent piece of advice, and I think we should really hear
No,
it.
you
because
gave it to him. Go on. He'd only
right.
go on at you.
I was trying to be kind there. So, Peter, Derek Nimmo, you have gained a point, and Kenneth has been very generous. There are 27 seconds on my advice to this audience starting now.
My advice to this audience is to listen to Kenneth Williams and not to me.
Quickly, Kenneth. Oh, Sheila Hancock, a challenge.
Hesitation.
I've been generous, giving him the question
I know, and
Well, he
Sheila
was
Hancock
slow. He
got
should
in.
have buzzed it before me.
Yes, well, as everybody's being generous, then we'll give it back to Kenneth Williams. And there are 21 seconds on my advice to this audience, Kenneth, starting
They
now.
can do no better than to follow the precept laid down by my honoured and valued colleague, Nimmo. Derek of that name. What a lovely personality he has. When he smiles, it seems every cloud flies away. It seems a fresh wind.
Peter
of
Jones
happiness
is challenged.
He's just doing a public relations job for Derek Nimmo. He's not giving advice to the audience.
Of course he is.
Yes, actually, my advice to this audience, he wasn't giving advice to this audience. You're quite right, Peter. It's a good challenge. He was actually doing a PR job for Derek Nimmo. We're just talking about Derek.
Yes.
So I agree with your challenge, and there are 4 seconds on my advice to this audience, Peter, starting now.
Next time, write in and see if you can get seats for some quite different.
During that round, everybody got some points, but the positions have not changed. Sheila's still in the lead. And Sheila, would you begin the next round? How I got here today. Would you talk on that for 60 seconds, starting now?
Well, more years ago than I care to remember, my mum, who was an attractive lady, was lusted after by my dad, and as a result, I appeared. Professionally, I trained at the Royal Academy of Dramatic Art and spent many years in repertory all over the country, from Wigan to Southampton.
Derek Nimmo has challenged.
Hesitation between Southampton and Wigan.
Yes.
Oh,
there
I
was.
didn't.
Well, you have to change trains.
You You did, surprisingly. I agree with Derek's challenge, and there are 37 seconds, Derek, on how I got here today, starting now.
Well, I got up this morning in Earl's Court, and having brushed...
Sheila Hancock has challenged.
You don't live in Earl's Court. Oh, I say!
Why did you have to stop him?
Why's he gone red? Were you in a private hotel or something? What did you... What can you answer? Answer, go on, answer. Clear your name, you'll be besmirched. Speak up, Derek, go on.
Why are you so amused at the Earl's Court as well, Sheila?
He doesn't live in Earl's Court, does he? Is it called Earl's Court where you live? I thought it was Kensington.
I'm not... I'm telling you how I got here today.
Oh, go on then, it might be good. Go on.
Also,
I don't
I'm
want the
not
point.
sure, but I believe Earl's Court is in the Royal Borough of Kensington. Is that right or not?
Is
I
it?
think so. Anyway,
Go on,
Royal Borough of Kensington and Chelsea.
It's called the Gateway to the Orient in some circles.
that was where he met my hang-up. Derek, I disagree with Sheila's challenge, so you have a point in 32 seconds on how I got here today, starting now.
And they released me from the police station, telling me that tomorrow they would bring charges against me, which I thought was very charming, actually. Awfully nice fellow, very sweet constable. And then I
Peter
had...
Jones has challenged.
Deviation.
Why?
Because it's obviously a lie. He wasn't warned by the police at all.
I don't believe you were
Wouldn't
in
be here.
Earl's Court police station last night.
But I was.
I don't believe you spent the
Ring
whole...
Constable Smith.
Right, have we got time? Do you mind waiting while
Why
we
do you
phone
make
Constable
all these...
Smith?
I mean, how do you profess to know there are no cabbages in King's Cross? What do you know about my private life? Can you prove that I wasn't...
No, I cannot prove.
Well, there you are, then I'm
and
talking
I
about the
definitely
subject.
said...
That's how I got here
I
today.
definitely said, Derek, it is possible that cabbages could grow in King's Cross. I said I don't know...
Well, it's possible that I was in Earl's Court police station all night, isn't it?
All right, 24 seconds on how I got here today, Derek, starting now.
Well, of course, it is a very long walk if you can't afford a bus fare, as I, unfortunately, am unable to do. And so I did have to stop...
Peter Jones has challenged.
Of course he can afford a bus fare.
Of course he can afford a bus fare. Peter, you have a point and the subject, and there are 17 seconds on how I got here today, starting now.
Talking of affording bus fares, that was the way I came.
Derek Nimmo's challenge.
We're not talking about his financial arrangements.
Precisely.
How I got
Well, we're
here
talking
today.
about
He's
his
a
We're
financial-
talking about...
His financial arrangements might have something to do with how I got here today.
I
Peter,
already
you have
said that
another
my
point.
financial
And
arrangement
there are-
prevented me from coming by any other means except by force.
You were devious about your financial arrangements. We all know that you can afford the bus fare. There are 13 seconds with you, Peter, on how I got here today, starting now.
I can remember when one handed the bus conductor a pound note and one was actually worried about whether he would accept it or not and give change. Nowadays...
Derek Nimmo has challenged.
He's
Why?
talking about...
Yes, I
days
agree
of
with you this
yesteryear.
time, Derek, so you have 4 seconds on how I got here today, starting now.
I arrived in a beautiful silver shadow.
Peter Jones has challenged.
He's talking about his arrival, not how he got here.
A very subtle challenge, and I will accept the audience applause as indication that they think it was worth a point, and the subject back to you, Peter, with 2 seconds on how I got here today, starting now.
I walked.
I'm afraid we have no more time to play just a minute, so I will now give you the final score, which is very interesting. Well, rather sad in one sense, because Kenneth, while we heard from him very effectively, he didn't manage to win many points in this particular game. Well, he has won before. He can't win every week, you know, and he has moved from King's Cross to Portland Place. It must be an awful strain. So, Kenneth, you came in 4th place. I won't say how many points you had. Peter Jones came forward with a tremendous rush at the end, but he still finished, I'm afraid, in 3rd place. And Derek, once again, finished in 2nd place behind this week's winner, who, on a return visit, is Sheila Hancock. We do hope you've enjoyed this edition of Just a Minute, and from all of us here, goodbye.
chairman of Just a Minute was Nicholas Parsons. The programme was devised by Ian Messiter and produced by John Castles.
We present Kenneth Williams, Clement Freud, Peter Jones and Andree Melly in Just a Minute. And as the minute waltz fades away, here to tell you about it is our chairman, Nicholas Parsons.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Hello and welcome once again to Just a Minute. And once again, I'm going to ask our four contestants if they can speak for just a minute on some subject that I will give them without hesitation, without repetition, and without deviating from the subject on the card. And we'll begin the show this week with Clement Freud. Clement, the subject is the wisest thing I ever heard. That's the subject. You'll talk on it 60 seconds, starting now.
It must be almost impossible to speak about the wisest thing I've ever heard for 60 seconds, because it would of necessity be a long statement, and it is a mark of insincerity of purpose to seek a high-born emperor in a low-down tea shop, which may well be the wisest thing I've ever heard, does in no way fill this bill by virtue of being too short.
And Kenneth Williams challenged.
Well, hesitation, I thought.
Yes, he said it was rather difficult.
Really
get
came to a
60
full
seconds.
stop, really.
stopped.
It was,
Yeah.
wasn't
Stopped.
hesitation.
I heard my say.
Yes, and you
Yes.
stopped.
And you stopped, and Kenneth got in first, and Peter spoke first, but Kenneth buzzed first. 35 seconds with you, Kenneth, now on the wisest thing I ever heard, starting now.
It was said of the king.
2 buzzes from Peter Jones.
No, only one. He said,
Yes, I'm afraid there was a hesitation, and there. 32 seconds with you, Peter, on the wisest thing I ever heard, starting now.
Some famous king, I can't remember which one.
Kenneth Williams has
I
challenged.
just said the king.
I know, but he didn't say king.
Well, he got it from me.
It still doesn't matter. He hasn't deviated from the subject, and he hasn't repeated himself in this round. So he keeps the subject. Another point for that. 29 and a half seconds. The wisest thing I ever heard, Peter, starting now.
He asked all his wise men to go away and come back with a remark which would be applicable and helpful in all situations. And one of them returned with this saying, "And this too shall pass away." I don't know who it was, but I've always thought that was just about the wisest thing I've ever heard, because it does disappear.
Andree Melly has challenged.
Hesitation.
Yes, there was Andree, because he couldn't find another word to one that came to his lips. There are 7 seconds on the wisest thing I ever heard, Andree, starting now.
The trouble with the wisest thing I ever heard is like the funniest joke I ever heard. I can never remember it the moment after I've been told. Cool, that's wise, I think to myself.
Once again, the whistle tells us that 60 seconds is up, and whoever is speaking at that moment gets the extra point. It was this time Andree Melly. Peter Jones, it is your turn to begin. The subject, power complexes. Can you talk on that for 60 seconds, starting now?
Power complexes are very nasty things because they're what other people have. You have, yourself, a power for good, ambition, and a wish to serve the community. But a power complex gets people into a kind of paranoiac state. Sit still while I'm talking to you. And it becomes increasingly important that other people do your bidding. Wake up at the back. Now, if you will all follow me, I will take you to the sunlit uplands. What's the matter?
Nothing. Carry on, quickly. Keep going.
I can't think of anything else to say. I was only trying to demonstrate what it was like, but...
Kenneth Williams challenged you when you couldn't think of anything else to say.
Oh, he did,
I thought
yes.
I had to, you see.
Yes, quite, yes.
Well, somebody had to, didn't they? And it was you got him first, Kenneth, with hesitation. So, Kenneth, the subject is power complexes. 16 seconds left, starting now.
It would be correct to say Hitler had one, I suppose. No, he was known as Sid Hitler, wasn't he?
should have waited till I'd asked what the challenge was and said, I wasn't talking about that Hitler, I was talking about Sid Hitler, who used to live in Camden Town with me or something. But Andree challenged first.
On the deviation of...
Yes, but don't rub it in, dear. You've got it all right.
Yes.
12 seconds on power complexes, Andree, starting now.
This is something that men have and women practically never. It's interesting to wonder
Kenneth
why.
Deviation, that is a disgraceful thing to say.
I don't know if it's disgraceful or not, but I agree that it is not correct. So, Kenneth, you have a correct challenge, a point for that, with 6 seconds on power complexes, starting now.
Yes, Napoleon had one, and Benito Mussolini. I said to him, you know, mio caro Benito, you no need to
Peter Jones actually did press his buzzer before
What did
the
he
whistle.
press it for?
Well, he couldn't have said this to Mussolini. Now, if you're going to stop Andree saying something because it's not a fact, he can't get away with
I didn't
describing
challenge
a
it 'cause it wasn't a fact,
conversation he
you're grateful.
had with Mussolini.
I didn't challenge her because it wasn't a fact. I challenged her because she's propagating wickedness,
Oh, no.
which is deviation of the worst kind.
We're all
Yes,
getting...
but Nicholas gave you the point because it wasn't right, didn't you?
No, yes, it's incorrect. I said...
Incorrect. Well, it's incorrect that he talked to Benito Mussolini.
You never said you spoke to Benito Mussolini, did you?
Yes,
You
he
just-
did.
Yes, because I used to do it telepathically. You see, what I did was... I used to feel I was talking to him. You know what I mean? I used to feel I was talking to Neville. Neville Chamberlain. I say, Nev. I always call him Nev. I say, Nev. And have you done the right thing flying to Birch's Gate? That's
All
what I
right.
used to ask him. You know what
All
I mean?
right. Kenneth.
And somehow I always felt I got an answer.
Yes, well, I'm sorry, we're
It
not
turned
gonna-
out to be someone pulling the chain of the loo, actually.
If we
but I
allowed
thought it was
telepathy,
manifestations.
if we allowed that sort of deviation from reality, telepathy, we
No,
never get
come off it.
anywhere.
You've heard of an ectoplasm, haven't you, dear? Come on.
Peter Jones is going to have a correct challenge and a point for one, and half a second left on power complexes, Peter, starting now.
Well done, Mr. Chairman.
So that gives us an interesting situation at the end of that round.
It was an interesting situation. I agree with you. It was.
Everybody has almost the same number. Andree just happens to have 1 point more than the three men. Andree, your turn to begin. The subject, competition. And will you talk on the subject of competition, Andree, starting now?
The fact that I'm 1 point ahead doesn't affect me in any way at all. Being a woman who realizes that there are more important things in life than winning.
Clement Freud is challenged.
Deviation.
Why?
She's not 1 point ahead.
She is.
Not as a result of this challenge.
But it's only after I have given a decision on the challenge is a point awarded.
No.
No, at this particular moment, she's still 1 point ahead. Once I have given the decision, we will know whether she's 1 point ahead or not. So, Andree, you get another point for an incorrect challenge,
You see?
and you keep the subject of
There you are,
competition.
she's 2 points ahead.
It's impossible, isn't it? It's a very good challenge. It's very clever. But I think the only thing I can do is tell Andree that you have 51 seconds on competition, Andree, starting now.
Having 2 marks in advance of the other 3 men.
Clement Freud is challenged.
Repetition of marks.
Points, I said.
She
Oh.
said points before, I think. Yes,
But
there
ahead.
are 47 seconds now on competition with you, Andree, starting now.
It gives you ulcers, heart attacks. What's the point?
Clement Freud is challenged again.
Hesitation.
Yes, well done, yes. There are 43 seconds on competition with you, Clement Freud, starting now.
One of my favorite competitions are the ones they had in newspapers, which were crosswords, giving you the last 3 letters, and all you had to put was the first hieroglyph to say ant.
Kenneth Williams is challenged.
Deviation. I should like to know the definition of a hieroglyph.
It's a glaff that you don't buy outright. You hire a glaff.
Clement Freud, you have another point and you have 28 seconds on competition starting now.
There's almost no competition in this game while the chairman absurdly favors one as opposed to the other three contestants. But in a normal contest...
Peter Jones has challenged.
He is insulting the chairman. And I don't think he should allow that.
Here.
And as I never favour one at the expense of the other three, then it is obviously deviation, isn't it, Peter?
Quite.
So you
I
have a
think
point.
you kind of cheat everybody more or less fairly. It all comes out in the end, you know. As long as one isn't dropped from the game, of course.
Peter,
Yes.
you have a point.
Thanks very much.
I'll give you 2. And you have 18 seconds on competition starting now.
Well, I think it's rather overrated because at school, for instance, one boy is top and all the rest are not top. Now this...
And Andree Melly has challenged
There
you.
were 2 tops.
There were 2.
No,
yes.
it's a hyphen, not top. Not top is a word hyphenated, you see.
No,
Go on,
I
please,
must
it's
be
very good.
perfectly
Go on.
frank and admit that I
10
did
seconds
repeat
for
the
Andree
word.
Melly to go on competition starting now.
I don't like competition at school. My daughter received a purple Smartie because she was better at spelling than her best friend, who is now our greatest enemy. You see, it gives people a sort of...
Once again, Andree Melly was speaking when the whistle went, gained another point for that, and has increased her lead at the end of that round. Kenneth, it's your turn to begin.
I think it was probably a purple heart, you know. It wasn't a purple Smartie. Probably. Very worrying they don't come in purple.
They do.
They come out of a little bottle.
We're preambulating towards my question.
Oh,
Yes.
sorry.
And the subject is, believe it or not, the question I'd most like to ask. That's the subject, a long one. Would you talk on it? The question I'd most like to ask, 60 seconds, starting now.
The question I'd most like to ask is of the government, and that is, why aren't they building homes for people? I'm sick of these office blocks going up everywhere, and I would demand an answer to that question. It seems to me categoric that everybody should have a roof over their heads. Next comes the food and the clothing.
Clement Freud has challenged.
What? How dare he? What's he on about?
Deviation.
Why?
Having food and clothes over your head.
Oh, it's a lovely challenge, Clement. I wish I could give you a bonus point, but I'll tell you what we do. We won't charge anything for that. It was a lovely thought, a nice laugh, but it wasn't deviating from the subject on the card, so Kenneth, you keep it. The question I'd most like to ask, 31 seconds, starting now.
Doubtless I will never be able to ask that question, because they don't show me in to meet the heads of the legislature. I've asked. I shouted them through the letterbox. Hello, in the head? Head, you in there? Nothing happened.
Clement Freud has challenged.
What's he on about now?
Repetition of head.
Yes, you shouted.
No,
yes.
I said Ned.
No.
Ned head. See, I often call him the 2, you see?
No.
All right, love?
No.
Oh.
From where I was sitting, which is further away from Clement Freud, it sounded like 2 heads. You shouted Ed too often. Clement, you have a correct challenge, and there are 16.5 seconds. The question I'd most like to ask, starting now.
The question I would most like to ask is, why is there no starch in blancmange? For many years at school, I assembled my thoughts on the matter, investigated the corn flour element of this sweetmeat.
Well, Clement Freud kept going, I thought, somewhat stumblingly towards the end, but until the whistle went, gained that extra point, and our leader is still Andree Melly. Peter Jones, it is your turn to begin. The subject, what I suggest you do. Will you talk on it for 60 seconds, starting now?
Well, it's very difficult to know under what circumstances I'm supposed to advise you. If, for instance, you want to make an omelette, I suggest you go and get hold of some eggs from somewhere, and a basin and a fork, salt and a frying pan, and break the...
Andree Melly has challenged.
But I hesitation.
Yes. Andree, you now have the subject of what I suggest you do with 43 seconds left, starting now.
What I suggest you do is take off your shoes, remove your socks, undo your belt, take your trousers down, then your tie, place it on the chair, unbutton your shirt. You should by then be in your underclothes. Sit on the floor in the lotus position. Close your eyes and relax. That is the very best advice you can possibly be given, because you will then revive your energies and feel that you can face the day with a sense of enjoyment and happiness, peace of mind, etc.
Peter Jones's challenge.
You can't face the day in your underwear.
As facing the day...
Or in the lotus position.
How do you know?
Well, you can
Have
actually...
you ever been in the lotus position? Come on.
Certainly.
Oh, you have?
Do you want to see it?
No, thank you.
You can face the day in any position at all. Unless it's
Exactly, Nicholas. Well spoken.
Peter Jones.
Yes.
I disagree with your challenge. 4.5 seconds for
Brilliant.
Andree Melly to continue talking on the
Well,
subject
she's still
of...
got it?
Yes. What I suggest you do,
Not just a
starting
pretty face.
now.
What I suggest you do is to try to emulate Kenneth Williams, if only you too.
Oh, that's true. Very clever, that girl.
Well, Andree Melly has moved even further forward to the end of that round, has got quite a commanding lead. Kenneth Williams, your turn to begin. The subject is Charlotte Corday. Would you talk on that for 60 seconds, starting now?
Well, she come in the room when he was having his bath and stabbed him. She made out that she was on the side of the Gironde party in order for him to make a statement. He did. Said, oh, I'll guillotine hundreds of them. So she plunged this weapon into his heart. When she was arrested, placed in the conciergerie, she was sitting for her portrait by Howard. Quite an interesting artist. It remains to this day that incredible portrait for anyone who wishes to see it.
Clement Freud's challenge.
Repetition of portrait.
Yes. No, first I said picture, I didn't say portrait. I said picture. I did, didn't I? I said picture. Yes, you see, they agreed. Shut your mouth! I'll let you all out of here. We're going to have an audience in next
what
week.
I've
It's
rehearsed.
disgraceful, it really is. Oh, I can't be treated like this. I was just getting worked up about it. That Charlotte Corday really got me going. I was getting so interested, you see.
You didn't get us very interested.
Oh, sorry.
And even your loyal supporters were very fair and said, no, you didn't say picture
Well, she
before.
did kill him. She killed my rat in his bath.
I
Poor
know.
old thing.
for
Still, I
those-
suppose when you've got to go, you've got
For
to
those
go.
who are wondering who the he was, they now know. You did say she about 7 times.
Wow!
And they were very fair. They let it go after 6. Clement, I agree with your challenge, and there are 18 seconds on Charlotte Corday starting now.
In my own history book, I always felt that they'd made a mistake about Charlotte Corday because they gave her weight as 98 kilos, which I translated into more stone than I would care to mention in front of a mixed audience. They also said she was a close relative of Helen Corday, which I didn't really believe because...
Peter Jones has challenged just before the
he
whistle.
didn't read that in his history book.
No, because Helen Corday was many, many years later, and I
Not
refuse...
that many years later than my history book.
I refuse to believe that your history book had put such an error as that in it. Helen Corday was more a contemporary of ours. There's half a second on Charlotte Corday with you, Peter, starting now.
At the waxworks. See it there.
The end of that round, Andree Melly is still in the lead. Andree, your turn to begin. The subject is celebrations. Would you talk about celebrations for 60 seconds, if you can, starting now?
The best kind of celebrations are those which happen unexpectedly. Happenings, when something marvellous has occurred and you get a whole lot of friends together and go out and oh, crikey.
And Kenneth Williams has challenged
Well,
that.
I thought it was a sort of
yes.
mix-up, a
It
hesitation.
was a
Yes.
hesitation, and more than a thought of. It was a definite one. There are 47 seconds for celebrations now with you, Kenneth, starting now.
I have had so many of these that it would be difficult for me to encapsulate the entire subject into 60 seconds. Nevertheless, that is my job, and I shall meet this task, daunting though it may seem, by discussing my birthday. On this occasion,
many dear acquaintances and some rather idiotic friends sent ludicrous telegrams and equally facetious and stupid greetings cards with silly little drawings of daisies and...
And Peter Jones has challenged.
A deviation.
Why?
Well, I can't believe at Kenneth's age that a birthday is a cause for celebration.
Oh, he did not make you laugh.
It's a very good challenge.
He does get you going, doesn't he?
And I'm not going to allow it.
Not?
I think looking like he does, it's every cause for a celebration. So, Kenneth,
I
it
bet
was
you say it to all the boys.
Well, I must say, you must agree we do have some fun in just a minute. Kenneth, I disagree with the challenge. So you have another point, and you have 6 seconds on celebrations starting now.
Most notable one in my life was in Candy and Salon, and the lads gave me some drambuie. I didn't really know how powerful the stuff was, and I soon became a very
Well,
I started off that, I don't know if you noticed, I started off that very slow. You noticed that? Did
and
you
you
notice
finished
that?
up very quick, yeah.
Yes, and I
That's why
hoped
they
that I
clap.
would win, you see.
Yeah. Well, you did win. You got a lot of points for that round. You
But she
moved
stood in the lead,
forward.
didn't she?
Oh, she's still in the lead, yes.
I thought so.
And Peter Jones is still in second place.
Yes, they were.
But you're only 1 point behind. But Clement Freud, your turn to begin. The subject, the best philosophy. Can you talk on that for 60 seconds, starting now?
There are people who say that honesty is the best philosophy, and this is not an opinion I share. Perhaps debt, filth, power complexes, celebrations, Charlotte Corday, what I suggest you do, the wisest thing I ever heard, would be much better philosophies than that.
Peter, Kenneth was a
Well,
challenge.
deviation. I mean, we just slung a load of subjects together, and they don't amount to any kind of coherent philosophy.
I
Therefore,
would
it's
say
devious.
that is a very good challenge, Kenneth, and so you have a point for that.
What
and
do you
40,
say then?
40, yes. And I'm in the position of power, I'm afraid.
Yeah, I
so-
heard you, yeah.
Yeah. You
Did
can
you hear
disagree with me, but I have
Oh,
to
no,
give the
no,
decisions.
no,
You have disagreed.
Yes.
You regularly disagree. In fact, the day will be when you agree with me for once, Clement. And there are 41.5 seconds for you, Kenneth, starting now.
This will be my opinion. You must understand. The best philosophy is one which takes as its cornerstone the very essence of liberalism, which maintains it is my duty. Wait a minute, what happened? Well, I couldn't,
Clement
and
Freud
something
is
happened.
challenged. Why?
Pause.
Hesitation.
Yeah.
Yes, I know, but he was thrown.
No, something happened. There wasn't an actual noise.
I know, there was a noise from the audience, but you must ignore
No,
these. You
I
have to
thought
keep
that
going.
was a buzz. I'm sorry. I
No.
really thought I heard a buzz, and therefore I
Well,
thought
then
it
you
was
must
a challenge.
keep going. All right, Kenneth, we'll be kind to you. You thought
Well,
it
it's
was a buzz.
ruined my whole philosophical thing now. Just ruined it, and my flow's gone. I've got no flow.
Kenneth, we're showing how kind and generous we all are. We'll believe you that you thought it was a buzz and not a noise in the audience, and allow you to continue with no points scored to anybody, with 22 seconds left. The best philosophy starting now.
It's one that takes as its base a theological premise called the ontological argument.
Peter Jones's challenge.
Repetition of premise.
Yes, I think you said premise before, and so.
Well, I mean, it was so far back and I was so rudely interrupted. How can I be expected? I really do think I'm labouring under appalling conditions.
I'm afraid that is the part
I'm
of the
labouring
game.
here under terrible conditions.
Yes.
Don't you think I'm labouring under appalling conditions, Clement? He's dropped off.
Yeah. He suddenly woke up and shook his head, which made the audience all laugh. Peter Jones, I agree with your challenge. You have 16 seconds on the best philosophy starting now.
Well, I was thinking about philosophy only the other day when it occurred to me at about 6 o'clock in the evening that I found it quite easy to go through an entire 24-hour period without reflecting on those less fortunate than myself. And I...
Well, I'm afraid we have no more time to play Just a Minute, so I will give you the final score at the end of this edition of the programme. And the situation is that Kenneth Williams was in third place, equal with Clement Freud. They were only 2 points behind Peter Jones, who finished a very good second, to this week's winner, Andree Melly. We do hope you've enjoyed this edition of Just a Minute. From all of us here, goodbye.
The chairman of Just a Minute was Nicholas Parsons. The programme was devised by Ian Messiter and produced by Bob Oliver Rogers.
We present Kenneth Williams, Derek Nimmo, Clement Freud, and Amy MacDonald in Just a Minute. And as the minute waltz fades away, here to tell you about it is our chairman, Nicholas Parsons.
Thank you very much indeed. Hello and welcome to Just a Minute. And as you've just heard, Amy MacDonald has very courageously come back again after an absence and after the way the three men were so rude to her the last time she was here to try and pit her wits and do battle in this game of Just a Minute. And I'm going to ask them to speak as usual, if they can, on some subject that I will give them without hesitation, without repetition, and without deviating from the subject which is on the card in front of me. And we'll begin the show this week with Amy MacDonald, who only just failed to beat the three regular competitors last time. Amy, the subject which Ian Messiter's thought of for you is how to think. Can you talk on that for 60 seconds?
Oh,
starting...
ask Kenneth to stop laughing at me now.
Well, I must say, Kenneth Williams, who sits opposite Amy MacDonald, I must tell the listeners that, he's been very naughty. He's making funny faces, putting his hands over his eyes and trying to dry her up. Kenneth, behave yourself. Let Amy try and talk on how to think 60 seconds, starting now.
This is very difficult to do.
I will explain afterwards what the laugh is. I keep going because no one's challenged you.
Well, it's especially difficult to do when you've got Derek Nimmo's toes floating around in front of your face. However, if you really want to concentrate, the very best thing to do is to shut your eyes and block everything out of your mind and really meditate. This takes an awful...
Derek Nimmo's challenge.
Well, she was either hesitating or meditating. I wasn't quite sure.
Well, I think she was probably asphyxiated, actually, from the... I mentioned that last thing because obviously the listeners couldn't hear. That huge laugh at the beginning was that Amy was looking at Kenneth and worried that she might dry up, and Derek very quietly got his shoes off and shoved his toes under her nose, and she suddenly looked down, and there were his toes wiggling away inside his socks. And she just
I couldn't see his legs, and it looked like an animal, you know.
I know. His toes do look like animals, I know. It's very embarrassing. Because there's a little hole in the desk where they sit, and they came shooting up there, and it's like two black, sinister animals. Right, Derek, I agree with your challenge of hesitation, and you get a point for a correct challenge, and there are 28 seconds on how to think, starting now.
One has different ways of thinking. The way I like to think most of all is to stand on my head and balance a turnip on my left foot and a carrot on the right one.
And Clement Freud is challenged.
Repetition of foot.
I didn't. Left foot and right one.
Yes.
You could have fooled me.
Well, I did, obviously.
An incorrect challenge, so Derek gets a point, and 15 seconds on how to think, Derek, starting now.
A few weeks ago, I went to a monastery in Kandy, which is in Sri Lanka, which used to be called Ceylon. And there were a lot of monks deeply involved in meditation. And this was, to me, a most salutary lesson. Clad in their saffron robes, they sat for hours on the glistening pavement.
loud whistle, which came right in my ear and made me almost jump out of my seat, told me that 60 seconds was up. And the one speaking then, as you know, gets the extra point. And it was, of course, Derek Nimmo on this occasion. So at the end of that round, Derek Nimmo has 3 points, and everybody else has yet to score. Kenneth Williams, will you begin the next round? The subject is listeners' letters. Will you talk on that? 60 seconds starting now.
I had one which said, "Dear Kenneth, to listen to you is to have a rare treat. Those dulcet tones, such a rare treat."
Amy MacDonald has challenged.
Well, deviation and...
I bet there was no letter that said, "Oh, shut your cake." Oh, yes, I quite agree. It was not in a listener's letter, no. Amy, you have a point for a correct challenge, and there are 51 seconds on listeners' letters starting now.
Listeners' letters can be very pretty, or they can be very disturbing and depressing. The thing is, one likes to open one's mail and see something nice about one. Oh no, that's all wrong.
And Clement Freud is challenged.
Yes,
The repetition of 111.
Yes. Clement, you have a point. We're going to hear from you on the subject now of listeners' letters, and there are 37 seconds left starting now.
I'm very pleased to say that I never get any listeners' letters, which seem to be reserved for Nicholas Parsons, who constantly talks of them. At almost every occasion, Nicholas Parsons states.
Derek Nimmo has challenged.
Says
Terrible repetition
Nicholas
of Nicholas Parsons.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, once he remembered in the show a little while ago, he corrected me for my grammar.
I thought you couldn't say Nicholas Parsons often enough on this show. This is what he said to me earlier on.
It's quite a change of nature that Clement Freud shows on occasions, isn't it? You can't get around me that way, Clement. There are 26 seconds on listeners' letters with you, Derek, starting now.
The letters that Nicholas Parsons gets, of course, are written by himself, and that's why he gets so many. Sometimes by his dear 8-year-old mother, which shows you that he's knocking 60, and therefore he does tend to get rather more than most people. I did once get a listener's letter which said to me, "Why can't that awful chairman be banished from the programme forever? Because he is so foolish and inept. Can't dear sweet Kenny Williams..."
Why, Kenneth? Why, Kenneth?
You're gonna make me laugh.
Kenneth, I'm usually very gentle with you. Why you should laugh when Derek Nimmo is being so rude about me is beyond my
You
understanding.
know it's all in the spirit of a game. Come on.
I sometimes wonder.
What was it old Newbolt said?
What was old
The
Newbolt?
deathly hush and the close tonight, an hour to play and the last man in. Something about the game, innit?
Yes.
It's all about the game, the spirit of the game. There's no calumny there, I can assure you.
Good. I'm glad you've reassured us all, in particular the listeners. Derek, the subject is backing. You begin, 60 seconds, starting now.
Particularly if you're a pop group, it's very important to have the right backing. I mean, Jerry had his pacemakers, Freddie had the dreamers, Cliff Richard couldn't have done without his shadows.
Clement Freud is challenged.
Deviation. He has done without the...
Oh, brilliant! He's brilliant! That's marvellous.
47 seconds on backing with you, Clement, starting now.
One of the most difficult things when you're playing the front part of the horse is backing if you're not in communion with the colleague performing the rites of the chap behind you. A friend of mine, working in a circus in Market Harborough, experienced such a thing on Christmas Day, 1929.
Derek Nimmo has challenged.
Deviation. Theatres don't play on Christmas Day.
Exactly, Derek. You're perfectly correct.
That's it's good of you to see it.
30 seconds with you on backing, Derek, starting now.
I went to Sandown Racecourse last week, but this is in fact...
Amy MacDonald has challenged. I quite agree, Amy. Deviation. You have 24 seconds on backing, starting now.
No, wait a minute.
Derek Nimmo's challenged.
Hesitation.
Derek, you have 22 seconds on backing, starting now.
Backing my car
Amy MacDonald has challenged. Hesitation. Yes, Amy, you have 20 seconds on backing, starting now.
When I took my driving test, I found the most difficult part of the whole thing was backing the car into a parking spot. In order to do this properly, one has to get the car along...
Clement Freud has challenged.
Repetition of car.
Yes, Clement, and you have 6 seconds on backing, starting now.
If you back a horse at 9-4 and it wins, and your placed money was £4.72,
Clement Freud speaking then when the whistle went, gained that extra point. At the end of that round, Derek Nimmo is in the lead, closely followed by Clement Freud, and Amy MacDonald and Kenneth are a little way behind them. Clement, your turn to begin. The subject, what experience has taught me? Can you tell us something of your vast experience and what you've learned in 60 seconds starting now?
What experience has taught me predominantly was that if you jumped off the Eiffel Tower on a pogo stick, your chances of not breaking your ankle were remote. But there are many other things which experience has taught me, one of them being to be permanently and steadily courteous to the chairman of Just a Minute. This sort of thing pays enormous dividends, and Nicholas Parsons is capable and in fact liable to ask you to dinner as a result. His lovely wife Denise opens the door. They live in a rather depressed area of northwest London and apologizes for the smell of cabbage which permeates the air of Hampstead Heath. You wipe your feet on the mat, apologize once more for being late. I said apologize before, didn't I?
Amy MacDonald.
He said apologize. I've got one right, haven't I?
Yes, you have. Well done, Amy. Yes. And
wait a minute, I've forgotten what the subject is.
I'm just about to give it to you. I've still got that smell of stale cabbage that he said was in my house up my nose at the moment. There are 15 seconds on what experience has taught me with you, Amy MacDonald, starting now. Clement Freud is challenged.
Deviation. Couldn't have taught her anything. You've only got to listen to her.
That's very rude.
It's very rude, but all that happens is, Amy, they do these rude things in order that you will get extra points, because everybody wants you to not to suffer in this particular way. You get a bonus point for, not a bonus, you get a legitimate point for a wrong challenge, and there are 14 seconds on what experience has taught me starting now.
There are many different walks of life where many kinds of...
and Clement Freud is challenged.
Yes.
Repetition of many.
Yes, I'm afraid we rely on the many.
Oh, I'm practicing that. Honestly, I just can't do it.
I think you're doing extremely well. I wouldn't. Why you nearly
No, I
won
mean,
last time you
repeating
were here.
myself, I do
Yes,
it all
I
the
know,
time.
but you got him very well with the other challenge on apologise. Nobody else was listening. 10 seconds on what experience has taught me, Clement, starting now.
What experience has taught me is that Derek Nimmo dresses impeccably. Every afternoon when I meet him, a new suit.
Derek Nimmo has challenged.
He doesn't meet me every afternoon.
I didn't say that.
And anyway,
I said every
I don't
afternoon
dress
when I
impeccably every afternoon. I often wear just
He did
knickers.
actually say, Derek, on every afternoon when I've met him.
Experience taught him that I dress impeccably. Most of the time I run round in rather grubby...
We'll get to that in a moment.
I think that was an incorrect challenge, and Clement has a point with 3 seconds to go, starting now.
And yet sometimes he runs around in
Clement Freud, speaking then when the whistle went, has now moved forward as equal in the lead with Derek Nimmo. And Kenneth Williams, your turn to begin. The subject, Cleopatra. Will you talk about her? 60 seconds, starting now.
I once visited that beautiful city of Heliopolis, and originally at the gates were two enormous obelisks with a copper top. And the burnished reflection of these objects, when the morning sun radiantly lit them, hailed the new day in the fashion of Ra, which was, of course...
Derek Nimmo.
I've not said a word about Cleopatra. It's a cook's tour of Egypt.
Can you justify Cleopatra?
Of course, the two obelisks, one now stands on the embankment, it's called Cleopatra's Needle, and the other is in New York.
I know, but you didn't make that very clear, did you?
I said the two obelisks at the gates of Heliopolis.
I know, but all right, they are Cleopatra's Needle, so all right, we'll leave it with you. We'll give you the benefit of the doubt, but you must be more explicit in future for the listeners who don't know, and Derek Nimmo as well. 35...
Well, he goes off into these adamantine stuff about, monasteries and
It's
things.
all right, I'm with you. You have a point.
He goes off on his specialised things.
Yes.
It's a disgrace in picking
Well, I know Cleopatra's Needle's your specialised thing, and you have 35 seconds on the subject of Cleopatra starting now.
Needle is, in that sense, a euphemism because, of course...
Amy MacDonald is challenged.
Well, Devious, we're not really talking about Cleopatra and Cleopatra's Needle is two different things, isn't it?
Well, no, her needle was named after Cleopatra, I think.
Was
wrong?
Oh, yes.
Which came first?
The chicken or the egg?
The needle or Cleopatra?
Anyway, Cleopatra is concerned in it, and that is the subject on the card, so whether you put the needle in as well, it doesn't really matter. And there's plenty of needle in this game, I can tell you. Kenneth, you keep the subject, and you have 32 seconds starting now.
And of course it was said of Cleopatra.
Clement Freud is challenged.
What?
Repetition of course.
I know, aren't you rotten? I'm not going to let you have it this time.
That's parts of speech, anyway.
Yeah, well, don't say it again, please, because otherwise I'll have to give it against you, Kenneth. 30 seconds on Cleopatra starting now.
The barge, she sounded like a burnish throwing burn of the water. The poop was beaten gold.
Clement Freud has challenged you again.
We've already had a burnished.
I'm afraid we have.
No, I was interrupted, you great fool.
No, right.
No.
Why don't you shut your mouth and let me get it out? I can't get it out, can I? How can I get it out if you keep on bringing up some rubbishy, footling objection?
Well, it is difficult.
I've come all the way from Great Portland Street. Rubbish. I mean, I've come here and I expect a bit of respect, you know.
I'm afraid, Kenneth, you don't give a lot of other respect to others.
I've been thrown out of better places than this.
And I'm afraid it is part of the game of For Just a Minute that you are interrupted. And this was a correct challenge. Clement, you have 28 seconds on Cleopatra starting now.
When I was very young, I acted in a play called Caesar and Cleopatra, in which I took the part of Tata Tito, who was a nurse. And it was a particularly good characterization because at the age of 11...
Kenneth Williams is challenged.
Deviation. This is all about him playing in a play. The subject is Cleopatra. And we're not discussing Cleopatra at all. We're discussing him in some play, some rotten old play. And I bet it was no good in it anyway. So I think the whole thing is devious, and I think I should get the subject back. Obviously, it should be in the hands
Well,
of
I'm
someone with
afraid, Kenneth, that Tata Tita was Cleopatra's nurse in the play by George Bernard Shaw of
The subject is Cleopatra, not plays, dear. The subject is Cleopatra. It's written down, Cleopatra.
He was not deviating from the
her.
subject on the card, so he must keep it and go on for 14 seconds, starting now.
The boy who played Cleopatra was a tremendous friend of mine, and many people talked about this. There was a scandal in 1936 in which neither of us were fortunately involved, but several men were sent to Dartmoor as a result.
Challenge, Kenneth, on that scandal in 1936 for which men got sent to Dartmoor, I would have allowed it because I don't believe it. Yes, I'll give you the score. Clement Freud was speaking then when the whistle went. He's moved into the lead ahead of Derek Nimmo at the end of that round. And Derek Nimmo, your turn to begin. How it should be done. 60 seconds, starting now.
I think it should be done very slowly at about 4 o'clock in the afternoon in a lovely meadow with daisies and buttercups flowering all around me, with the sun shining down, burnishing Cleopatra's needle.
Kenneth Williams has challenged.
He was taking the rise out of me, and I'm not... taking the rise out of me.
Kenneth, if I got upset every time anybody took the rise out of me, I would never come back.
Oh, yes, you loved it. I could see you laugh straight away. You enjoyed it, didn't you? Oh, yes.
I was laughing at something quite different.
It's easy to take the rise. Anyone can take the rise.
I know, you've done it many times.
No. I think it's disgusting. Rotten, cheap tricks like that. Anyway, thank you.
He's feeling a bit better now because Clement Freud is
Well, it was
consoling him.
devious.
It wasn't. It's how it should be done. It was describing the situation in which how it should be done.
Nonsense. He echoed all that stuff about talking about the obelisks.
No, he
nothing
didn't.
to do with
He
it.
just happened to say about the sun shining down on Cleopatra's needle. It probably does sometimes. We all know that's on the embankment, not very far from where we're recording this programme. Derek, you keep the subject, and there are 40 seconds on how it should be done, starting now.
How it should be done in Great Portland Street is quite a different matter, really. Preferably with
Kenneth Williams has challenged again.
Because this is also devious. I mean, it keeps on about how it should be done, but what is being done? We don't know. I mean, what is it you're doing, dear? Do let us know.
Yes, you've already been going for 27 seconds and you haven't got to anything that's been done. So, Kenneth, you have the subject and there are 34 seconds on how it should be done, starting now.
How it should be done is this. You present the protagonist, the antagonist, and you make a resume. And then you say to people, this is... What's
Amy
up?
McDonald's challenge.
I can't understand what this is babbling, he's hesitating.
Well, he was trying to go
He could be
quickly
saying
because he knew
anything.
that if he didn't go quickly, you would challenge him for going slowly and pausing. So I'm afraid
No,
he
but
has
there is a happy...
Why don't you shut up? You shouldn't have women on the show at all.
No, he keeps
women
us
on
up
the
on this
show.
occasion, Amy. Kenneth, you continue on how it should be done. The 29 seconds left, starting now.
The
Clement
You
Freud.
ruined me. You put me off. She keeps making faces and behaving ridiculous.
Yes, Amy MacDonald is now going to know how to play the game. She's making faces at Kenneth Williams and putting him off, the same as he put Amy off before. Clement, what is your challenge?
Either repetition or deviation.
Neither.
Both.
Kenneth keeps the subject, and there are 26
the
seconds.
The instant.
There are 26 seconds, Kenneth. How it should be done, starting now.
How it should be done is the right way. In other words, if somebody has...
Derek Nimmo has challenged.
You said right way before.
Yes, I'm afraid you did, Kenneth.
Well,
There
you've
are-
been mucking about so much that one wonders what one has said. I think you showed a little more generosity of spirit.
Yes, he should do, but he has the subject now. 14 seconds, how it should be done, starting now.
How it should be done is quite simple, really. You bend the lady back across your knee like that, stroke her up and down her thighs, gradually undo her hand like that, and pulling the neck back.
Clement Freud, the challenge! Before Derek Nimmo went too far by illustrating with Amy MacDonald.
Deviation. He hasn't said what he's doing.
Well done, Clement. A point for a good challenge. I wish I gave you a bonus for... anyway. 4 seconds on how it should be done,
It's
Clement.
not fair. You just use me on this program.
You've now realised, have you, Amy?
Yes.
Well, that's why we have having you around.
I'm not here for my talent at all.
I think Derek Nimmo is taking advantage
You
of
give
all
me
your
another
talent
5
just
seconds, I'll show you.
then. Even in front of this audience, if he can be so aroused as that by your talent, I should think you'll be very flattered. 4 seconds on how it should be done, Clement, starting now.
How it should be done is to pace out 100 yards, step by foot.
At the end of that round, Clement Freud increases lead. Amy MacDonald and Kenneth Williams are both trailing in 3rd and 4th place, respectively. Clement, will you begin the next round? The subject, space shots. Will you talk? 60 seconds on that, starting now.
To have a successful space shot, it is essential to begin a countdown, preferably at 90. 89, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and so right down to the lowest digit, at which point somebody shouts, blast off. And with a mushroom cloud ranging into the sky, the capsule leaves for some destination which may or may not be known to the audience.
Kenneth Williams has
He
challenged.
said may twice.
Well, he did, didn't he? Yes. You have a point,
It's
Kenneth.
a
and you
figure of
have...
speech. It's more than you did to me.
For once, you were listening very
I was
carefully.
so intent.
I know. 33 seconds on space shots, Kenneth, starting now.
These shots that you take in space can be done with a brownie, and the best thing to do is to go to the chemist, fetch a pill.
Derek Nimmo challenge.
Deviation, all these nasty things he's doing with the brownie, I think it's disgusting.
They may be disgusting, but he didn't mean what you did. You made it disgusting with your challenge. Kenneth, you have a point, and you have 27 seconds on space shots starting now.
Providing you stop down to the right shutter aperture, then you will get a good... I hope nobody's going to challenge me on stuttering.
Clement Freud did.
Well, what a mean thing to do. You know I've got an impediment. How dare you bring
You've
it?
never had it before.
Well, it's
Derek Nimmo's challenge as well. Clement, your challenge.
Hesitation.
Yes, all right. 21 seconds, space shots, Clement, starting now.
In the universe, there are at this moment a great number of objects floating from left...
Derek Nimmo's challenge.
Repetition of number.
Yes, you
numbers,
talked...
I said, this time. Great numbers.
Yes, that is perfectly
But the
correct.
number
You
when you
did,
did it.
and so I must leave it with Clement, who has 14 seconds on space shots starting now.
I had an aunt who was a great authority on space shots.
Derek Nimmo has
Repetition of
challenged.
great.
Yes, you have 11 seconds on space shots, Derek, starting now.
When I go out with my little rocket, I stand in the middle of a group...
Amy MacDonald is challenged.
Hesitation. He went stand.
Yes, I know he did. And we all know why he did as well. Amy, you have a correct challenge, and you have 6.5 seconds on space shots starting now.
About 2 weeks ago, I was in Washington, and I was shown...
Kenneth Williams.
Deviation. She just plugged in the fact that she goes on holidays. We don't want to hear anything to do with space. What do I do with space? I was in Washington. Loads
I was
of
going to
rubbish
tell you
just showing
something
off.
very
Shouldn't have women
interesting.
on this show anyway. Never
Well, of
mind.
course, Washington is the head of the United States government, if you
also
don't
a gentleman,
know.
we never talk
They're the
about.
ones who've underwritten the space program, and it's quite liable she heard a great deal about it while she was in Washington.
I even saw the things that went to the moon.
I should save that.
Yes.
That's what I was going to tell you about.
Well, I would. You've got 3 seconds to tell us, starting now.
There was a great big one that was...
Well, I'm afraid there is no more time to play Just a Minute today, so I will now give you the final score in this particular game. And Amy MacDonald, returning after a little while, did very well. She got a lot of points. She got 8. She finished 1 point behind Kenneth Williams, who was, of course, in 3rd place. He was only 3 points behind Derek Nimmo, and he was 2 behind this week's winner, Clement Freud. Hope you've enjoyed this edition of Just a Minute. From all of us here, goodbye.
The chairman of Just a Minute was Nicholas Parsons. The programme was devised by Ian Messiter and produced by Bob Oliver Rogers.
We present Derek Nimmo, Clement Freud, Peter Jones and Andree Melly in Just a Minute. And as the minute waltz fades away, here to tell you about it is our chairman, Nicholas Parsons.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Hello and welcome to Just a Minute. And once again, I'm going to ask our 4 contestants if they can speak on some subject that I will give them without hesitation, without repetition, and without deviating from the subject on the card in front of me. And we'll begin the show this week with Peter Jones. Peter, nice to have you back.
Thank you
wearing
so
the
much.
same shirt as you were last. The subject, Peter Jones, is Pete. Can you talk on that for 60 seconds, starting now?
When I was a boy in Shropshire, we used to get peat from a place called Wixell Moss.
Clement Freud has challenged you.
Deviation.
Why?
One is a lad in Shropshire.
A very clever and witty challenge, but he wasn't deviating from the subject of Pete. So, as it's an incorrect challenge, we give a point to Peter Jones. He keeps the subject of Pete, and there are 54 seconds left, starting now.
It was delivered in a horse-drawn vehicle, and we used to burn it on the fire instead of coal or wood. And excellent it was. Looked like very dark brown shredded wheat. Rather larger pieces. And you could put it in the garden, milch it, or is it mulch? I forget. But you put it round if the...
Derek Nimmo challenge first.
Put it...
Yes, he put it more than once, didn't he? So, Derek, he repeated the word. You get a point for a correct challenge, and you have 35 seconds on the subject of Pete, starting now.
I have sat here quite often looking at Pete, or Peter Jones, as he's known more popularly, and I find it the most rewarding sight, that cherubic face, that elderly greying hair, the sprinkles of dandruff floating down. Sometimes...
Clement Freud is challenged.
Deviation. I mean, trichological deviation.
Clement Freud is sitting beside Peter Jones. He's looked very close at his hair and decided that he has no dandruff.
No dandruff at all. I use the new medicated shampoo. Since I've been using that, girls won't leave me alone. If I go to a party, I have to borrow dandruff from a friend.
And Clement Freud was conveying that he'd been to a trichologist. On either score, I'm going to give it to you, if only out of kindness and consideration to Peter Jones. There are 12 seconds, Clement, on the subject of Pete with you, starting now.
The first time I stayed on an island where the water ran through peat, I wanted to have a bath and sat on the side of the tub, awaiting the water to become...
Andree Melly challenge.
2 waters there.
Yes, there were. So the subject's now with Andree Melly. She has 1 second on Pete, starting now.
There is that Pete.
Ian Mester's back with us, blowing his whistle in elegant Messeter fashion, telling us that 60 seconds is up, and who was speaking at that moment was Andree Melly, so she gained the extra point, and she has a lead over all the boys at the end of that round. She has 2, they all have 1. Clement Freud, your turn to begin. The subject is senior citizens. Would you talk on that for 60 seconds, starting now?
Of all the senior citizens, I would most like to commend you is CSM Harry Hawkins, who is 77 years old and can blow his...
Derek Nimmo's challenge.
Well, if you write it down, 77 is repetition, isn't it? So therefore...
If you write it down, it is, but if you say it, it isn't, so it's an incorrect challenge, and Clement keeps the subject, and there are 50 seconds on senior citizens, starting now.
There was a time not that long ago when people were called old, elderly, or aged, but no more. Senior citizens is the word which has come in, and senior citizens they now are. A fine bunch of people, if ever I saw. On the old side, I will admit.
Peter Jones's challenge.
Repetition of people.
Yes, indeed, and you have 34 seconds now, Peter, on the subject of senior citizens, starting now.
Well, I think it would be a good idea if instead of putting them into homes, they were invited to join the family, and so it becomes an extended unit, and they are able to look after the children, which they always enjoy, and can be extremely useful and kind. And if they are relegated to areas exclusively occupied by senile people, well, it's terribly boring for all concerned and expensive for the rest of us to keep up. But if they can be invited to take part and participate...
I feel the powerful applause there, Peter, for it was not only for you keeping going so well, gaining an extra point for speaking the whistle went, but it was also for the sentiments which you expressed.
Oh, how very nice.
Andree Melly, your turn to begin. The subject, a bit of a laugh. Would you talk on that for 60 seconds, starting now?
Ho or ha, even he could be 3 examples of a bit of a laugh. This is an extraordinary...
Peter Jones's challenge.
If she gave 3 examples, it must be repetitious.
But she didn't repeat anything, any word or anything else. She just was repetitious in her thoughts, but not repetitious in her speech. So it's an incorrect challenge, and there are 51 seconds on a bit of a laugh, Andree, starting now.
Peter Jones, thinking that he was going to get a point for that absurd challenge, was, one would say, a bit of a laugh, because I knew perfectly well that Nicholas Parsons wouldn't allow it. He hadn't really listened, I don't think, and thought what a...
Derek Nimmo's challenge.
Oh, deviation. I mean, Nicholas Parsons might award a point for anything. How can you possibly...
I am, I might, and I'm going to award a point against you to Andree Melly for that challenge.
I knew you'd be unpredictable.
Well, you haven't even given me a good basis for your challenge. What was it?
Deviation.
No, of course not. There are 37 seconds, Andree, on a bit of a laugh, starting now.
Me presuming that Derek Nimmo in that case would have got a point was a great bit.
Clement Freud's challenge.
Deviation.
Why?
Of grammar. It's me presuming. It's like me Tarzan or me Jane. Grammatically, it is I presuming.
Me Jane, but I presuming. Clement, you have 34 seconds on a bit of a laugh, starting now.
I think the joke that gave me the smallest bit of a laugh concerned an Englishman, a native of Ireland, someone whose origins were Welsh, and a man I can't... Isn't it difficult?
Isn't it? It's
Yes.
impossible to tell a
it is.
story, as Peter Jones discovered a little while ago. Peter, you challenged then,
Yes, hesitation. was
and
the
I would
term.
agree.
Ah, good.
Me too. What do
19
you think,
seconds,
Derek?
Peter, on a bit of a laugh, starting now.
Well, a bit of a laugh is better than nothing at all. It's not as good as a guffaw, but it is slightly better than a titter.
Clement Freud is challenged.
Repetition of better.
Yes, there were two betters, so Clement, you have 11 seconds on a bit of a laugh, starting now.
Going into a public house, these four fellows attacked the publican, shouting, "Yo!"
Derek Nimmo's challenged.
Hesitation.
No, I disagree. No. 4 seconds on a bit of a laugh with you, Clement, starting now.
Turn the glass upside down and ring the fire brigade.
Peter Jones is challenged.
He said they went in shouting, yo, and then he went on saying, turn the glass upside down. He was just going to say, ho, ho, you see, but he switched it. Because it would have been a repetition of ho.
Well, of course, this is an impossible, so you can maintain he was deviating.
Yes, because he said, they went in and said, yo, and then he
Well, all right,
changed
this
it
is an impossible decision for which I can judge, because I don't know whether that's deviating or not, so I put it to the superior
What do you mean? If
judgment
it's an
of wisdom.
impossible decision, it means nobody can come to a decision.
I can come to a decision.
They're going to come. The audience are going to come.
Then it's
to a
not
decision
impossible.
for us. Oh no, they're
It's
going to come
impossible
to a
for you.
decision because they went in and said, "Yo, turn the glass upside down." It doesn't make sense. So it could
No,
be
it's
devious.
not. It's quite easy to
No,
decide.
quiet, Peter. I'm going to let the audience decide.
But I would have thought a chairman who knew what he was doing.
Yes, I know, but you can't get them.
Surely, after all these weeks and years, you've all firmly established that you haven't got a chairman who knows what he's doing. If you agree with Peter's challenge of deviation, you will cheer for Peter. If you disagree with it, now be fair, you boo for Clement Freud, and you all do it together now. You see, Clement, you have the audience with you, and you have a point, and you have 2 seconds on a bit of a laugh, starting now.
Tra-la.
I think Clement has played this so hard. Now he's got complete sympathy from every audience now, and they feel they must support him. Clement, you've taken a commanding lead at the end of that round. You're almost twice as many points as Andree and Peter in second place, and Derek's trailing. Peter, it's your turn to begin. The subject, so apt for you, Peter, I'm sure, youth. Would you talk on that for 60 seconds, starting now?
Well, they are very often misrepresented, I think, and I do believe that it's awfully good that they are now wearing jeans and these Levi shirts, because it's making the Western people rather on the same level as those in the East. And eventually, I'm hoping that all over the world there will be a kind of uniform which is certainly varied and made more colorful from one place to the other, but basically economic and leveling, so that all this business of people walking about in top hats...
Derek Nimmo's challenge.
Repetition of people.
Yes, I'm afraid you repeated the people. Very interesting again, Peter. You talked about the senior citizens and now the levelling and the East. And fascinating.
Well, thank you very much.
It's jolly clever to do it in just a minute when they're all breathing down your necks to challenge you. 27 seconds, Derek, on youth, starting now.
A youth that one held in a golden dawn came all together with a mighty yawn. And round the fields I heard them say, can that youth come another day? And he felt...
Peter Jones' challenge.
He's supposed to talk and he's singing.
If you call that singing...
Well, I've heard him
Can't
sing,
say
and it's
much
very
more.
like that.
Well, that's a good reply. Though I said talk, it's...
You're tone deaf, you don't know, probably.
And from your last remarks, I would think that you're exactly the same. He's allowed to keep going, whether in speech, in whichever form he wishes, providing he doesn't repeat himself, hesitate, or deviate from the subject, which
You
he
can,
wasn't.
in fact, sing gibberish, I suppose, if you want.
No, because if he repeats the gibberish, or hesitates in the gibberish, as you did a time ago,
Yes.
anything like that, he's had it, hasn't
I
he?
see,
You
yes.
can get him with a challenge.
Yes, who's in the lead at the moment?
Clement Freud's still in the lead. You're just 2 points behind. It's all very close. It's all very exciting.
Oh, it is, isn't it?
Yes.
I'm enjoying it.
Derek, you have 14 seconds on youth, starting now.
Richard of York gave battle in vain, and that's what gave him a terrible pain. Young he was, with golden hair.
Clement Freud is challenged.
Repetition of both young and golden from the last
Yes,
poem.
correct, Clement. 7 seconds on youth with you, starting now.
Youth is the first syllable of euthanasia, something which I'm desperately against because it is inhuman.
Clement Freud was then speaking when the whistle went, gained that extra point, and has now increased his lead at the end of that round. Clement, it's your turn to begin, and the subject is tobacco. Ian Messiter has given you that, I'm sure, for a reason, because we know your feelings on the subject. 60 seconds, starting now.
There was a case in a newspaper report the other day concerning a man who meant to grow cannabis and in fact chose the wrong seed at the chemist shop and grew tobacco, which was disastrous because he didn't like smoking anything but resin and therefore had to change his entire way of life and become addicted to a weed, which actually I find very much more acceptable than the awful thing that people put in cigarette paper, pipes, and even cigars. If I had my own way, which by the incredible silence from the audience who've all gone home, I don't seem to have, I would ban tobacco from civilized society because I loathe it, I find it offensive, and I wish that in lifts or cars or other contained spaces there was a law preventing people.
That's the first time for a long time that has happened. Somebody started with a subject and finished with it. It was on this occasion Clement Freud, so he gets a bonus point, 2, for doing exactly that. A subject which he feels deeply about, and we all do in just a minute, because as a lot of people know, we won an award as the non-smoking show of the year, because we're all non-smokers. And
why didn't we go on winning it?
Because there was no competition.
Because we won it about 3 years ago, and that was it.
Yes, that was it. Yes.
We didn't get anything anyway, did we?
No, nothing at all.
Not even
Are there any other awards for not doing anything else? Might be quite a few we could notch up.
Well, there can't be any more filthy habits, as Clement has just demonstrated. The next subject is the advantage I have. Andree Melly, it's your turn to begin. Would you take it up now? 60 seconds, starting now.
One of the advantages I have is that I don't smoke, which means naturally that I'm healthier than those that do. Another is that I belong to the female sex. And as this game consists mostly of men on the panel and chairman, I know that I will win this particular point because these 3 gentlemen wouldn't dream of challenging.
Gentlemen.
One of the gentlemen has challenged you
3
Yes.
quite legitimately, because I think you got inhibited by what you were saying and you tripped. And Derek had the correct challenge. 37 seconds on the advantage I have. Derek, starting now.
The advantage that I have over, I think, perhaps all the other members of the panel, apart from the dear lady next to me, is knowing her uncle. And also Maud, her mummy, who lives in Brighton. Greatly charming woman, lovely chattel, dearest person, came from Liverpool, so did I. And then they might know, I may be wrong on this one, but the others will probably be acquainted with dear George, the oldest teenager in the business, who goes round singing his jolly jazz songs through the halls of this country and is cheered and acclaimed wherever he goes.
This program's becoming the Melly promotion program, isn't it? Andree and George and the family. Derek, you kept going magnificently, and you're still in second place. You're 3 points behind. Clement Freud is still in the lead, and Peter Jones and Andree Melly are trailing a little behind you. Derek, your turn to begin. The subject, dear old friends. You've spoken about some, think about some more, talk about them. 60 seconds, starting now.
Dear old friends include dear Mrs. Melly, who lives down right.
Andree Melly has challenged.
I really
You can't have all that again.
I know you can't, nor can we, but he has unfortunately deviated from the subject. There are 53 seconds, Derek, on Dear Old Friends, starting now.
And her uncle, Alan Isaacs, who used to run the Bassnett Bar in Liverpool, and was a most popular chap, and still is, I might say. Other dear old friends include, of course, that senior citizen, Clement Freud. What?
Repetition of course.
No, I haven't said of course.
Yes.
You that says of course.
No, you said of course.
Kenneth Williams, who says of course.
He said of course near the beginning, I think, didn't he?
Yeah, of course he did.
Yes.
And so, Peter, you have the subject with 40 seconds to go. Dear Old Friends, starting now.
Is it as long as that? 46 seconds, it
No,
seems.
40 seconds.
Oh, 40, I beg your
Quick going,
pardon.
quickly.
Yes. Well,
Deviation is talking about the time. He hasn't said a word about dear
Well, I
old
must
friend.
be fair, I did say start.
well, it does seem as though he'd been talking for such ages, you know, and then I find at the end of it he'd only been talking for 20 seconds. It's extraordinary gift, isn't it, that, to make it sound like half an hour?
Quite a few people have that gift in this program.
Yes, quite.
Derek,
I
you
wonder
have
if he ever sends telegrams.
You have a legitimate challenge, and therefore you have 35 seconds on Dear Old Friends, starting now.
Matilda Mouse. Do you remember reading? And I love bunny stories. These are all some of my dear old friends. And Winnie the Pooh. Gosh, I often sit there, having had my cocoa at night, looking my way through books and saying, oh, I remember when I was a little tiny child.
Peter Jones's challenge.
A repetition of remember.
Yes, Peter. 14 seconds on Dear Old Friends, starting now.
They are really the nicest kind to have, and it's quite impossible to make them afresh, even if you begin in middle life, which I am approaching quite rapidly, and I think one of the most...
Peter, your turn to begin. The subject is putting in everything I've got.
Ooh. Could you repeat that? Putting in everything I've got?
Yes. Yeah, Mester thought of the subject, not me. Don't look at me like that, please. But Peter Jones are going to talk on the subject for 60 seconds to go, starting now.
Well, it's something I am apt to do when I'm cooking. For instance, making Christmas pudding, which I do every year. I'm apt to go round...
And Derek Nimmo challenge.
Repetition of that.
Yes. There are 50 seconds on putting in everything I've got,
And
Derek,
Jan,
starting
how
now.
Well, you know, we should really all try and put in everything we've got. I mean, when you were walking along the Strand today, did you think to yourselves, I am going to meet somebody following week...
Peter Jones' challenge.
Well, I just wanted to congratulate him in eventually getting to the West End from Brighton.
Which has got absolutely nothing to do with the show, has it?
No, nothing at all. But it was such a relief. I felt I was steeling myself for another of these accounts of life in Sussex and Hove. And I just felt what a relief, a great sense of relief, which I wanted everyone to share, you know.
Well, having all shared it, what I'll do, because it would be unfair to the people chasing Derek if we gave him a point for that, I will allow no points, because everybody appreciated your remarks, Peter. Leave the subject with Derek Nimmo. Well, it doesn't matter, but Derek, putting in everything I've got, which you were doing with great aplomb and éclat and everything else. 41 seconds, starting now.
Particularly when I'm travelling on a troop ship, I like to put in everything I've got. I rush up to Wren's, and I watch and the nappy.
Andree Melly, this challenge.
Hesitation.
You were putting in too much then, Derek,
Much.
I'm sorry.
Yes.
And you tripped up and you have lost the subject. A point to Andree Melly and 34 seconds on putting in everything I've got, Andree, starting now.
Well, I start with the kettle and the pots and pans and the Welsh dresser, table chairs. Into the removal van it goes, followed by the three-piece settee, the television set, because...
Clement Freud.
Deviation, you can't have a three-piece settee.
Yes, you
might
can.
be broken. You see.
Oh, she was putting in everything I got and doing too quickly, and so instead of saying three-seater, she said three-piece. All right, Clement, you have 24 seconds on putting in everything I've got, starting now.
In the kitchen, putting in everything I've got would doubtless contain... Couldn't steal myself repeating that awful list of ingredients.
It was a few weeks weeks ago that you collected
I
the
know,
sugar.
but I
Yes.
keep doing it.
Andree Melly challenge first.
Yes, we have a hesitation.
Yes, indeed, Andree. And you have 18 seconds on putting in everything I've got, starting now.
Putting in everything I've got in the kitchen consists of sugar, rice, potato, peelings, fish bones, the largest saucepan I can find, followed...
Clement Freud is
Repetition of saucepan.
Yes.
Earlier on.
And if she was putting it all in, why'd you put a saucepan into a saucepan?
That would have little to do with the repetition of saucepan.
It would, and from the audience reaction, they thought exactly the same as that. There are 8...
I don't know why she was in the kitchen at all. She'd sent everything off in a big van.
But you may have noticed, Peter, she hadn't sent any of the kitchen things.
No, she put the
No, she
things
was
to the
staying behind
No,
the kitchen.
I was in Clement Freud's kitchen because he didn't want to be there, so I was doing it for him.
Oh, I see. Ah, well, I didn't realize what was going on.
There are 8.5 seconds on putting in everything I've got, Clement, starting now.
Before you can correctly analyze everything...
Andree Melly has challenged.
Well, a hesitation.
I would agree,
Right.
yes, it's got very sharp, hasn't it? 5 seconds, Andree, putting in everything I've got, starting now.
Even if you're losing and you're told you couldn't possibly win, you've got to put in everything you've got. Being the only woman on the team,
Andree Melly showed the right spirit which one should display at all times, and particularly in Just a Minute, if you're a girl fighting against 3 men, because they always put in everything they've got. And she did come up from 4th place, I'm pleased to say, to finish in 3rd place behind this week's winner, Clement Freud. We hope that you have enjoyed this edition of Just a Minute. From all of us here, goodbye.
The chairman of Just a Minute was Nicholas Parsons. The programme was devised by Ian Messiter and produced by Bob Oliver Rogers.
We present Kenneth Williams, Derek Nimmo, Clement Freud, and Peter Jones in Just a Minute. And as the minute waltz fades away, here to tell you about it is our chairman, Nicholas Parsons.
Thank you. Thank you very much indeed. Hello and welcome to Just a Minute. And as you've just heard, we welcome back those 4 most experienced male competitors of the game. And we're going to ask them to speak as usual, without hesitation, without deviation, and without repetition. And we're going to start the show this week with Clement Freud. And Clement, the subject is waiting. Can you talk on waiting for 60 seconds, starting now?
Milton, in a poem called On His Blindness, said they also serve who only stand and wait, which is actually unusual because recently I was in a waiting room on British Rail where I had bought a platform ticket which had now gone up in price, justified by the fact that you now waited longer for trains. And demanding a cup of tea, the lady said, "Sit down, toast will be half an hour." I felt this to be entirely unreasonable and said, "Madam, I am in a hurry." And she said, "I am unmarried. Call me Miss." I said, "Certainly, Mademoiselle," because she had a slightly French accent, which I'd omitted to tell you. And waiting in a library for the book to be returned by several housewives from Market Harborough who had clubbed together and put their names on a list which had promised to supply any reading material whatsoever.
Well, we've been waiting a long time for someone to manage to speak for just 1 minute without being interrupted. Clement Freud kept going magnificently on waiting, so he not only gets a point, but a bonus point for not being interrupted. He has 2 at the end of that round, and everybody else has not only yet to score, they've yet to speak. Kenneth Williams, your turn, and the subject, showstoppers. I'm sure you've known many of those in your time. Will you talk on that for just 1 minute, starting now?
The most hilarious one was when this actor arrived in a hatbox, which was placed on stage, and the other character said, "Where is he?" And the hatbox opened, and underneath the grave trap, he slowly came up, you see, through the hatbox, which had a false bottom.
And Clement Freud challenged before he came up to the hatbox. Clement, why were you
third
challenged?
time.
What's that?
I challenged when the hatbox had only appeared twice.
Oh, that's right. He did mention the hatbox before, didn't he? What a pity. Yes, because I was very...
I wanted to find out what happened.
I
That's why
know.
I would have challenged, and I was too fascinated by the story and the way he was telling it.
Well, I was so
Will you let
fascinated
him
that
get
I
on
didn't,
with it, and,
I didn't even
and then
realise
you can
that
challenge afterwards.
Yes, I didn't even realise he'd repeated it. Anyway, Clement, it was a correct challenge. You get a point for a correct challenge. You take over the subject of showstoppers, and there are 50 seconds left, starting now.
And in this totally disastrous two-character play, the audience were astonishingly bored after the first act, and few came back during the second intermission.
Derek Nimmo has challenged.
Hesitation.
Yes, I would agree with that.
Mine was rather a good story as well.
But you should try and say it without hesitating,
Can I tell
Clement.
it?
No, we'll carry on with the show, because
Thank you
Derek
very
Nimmo
much.
has yet
And-
to speak. And there are 40 seconds left on showstoppers, Derek, starting now.
Well, I do very much like the showstoppers, particularly to old ladies in the underground. I often go up to them and say, "Would you like to see my ginger beer top?" And I open my raincoat, and there are showstoppers, sometimes from...
Peter Jones has challenged.
Hesitation.
I should think so indeed, yes. Ginger beer indeed, really. Peter Jones. Ginger beer is a Cockney rhyming slang for something else I've just remembered. Yes. All right, Peter, I agree with your challenge, and you have 26 seconds now for showstoppers, starting now.
I identify showstoppers with songs in shows that have been stopped by people like Ethel Merman, for instance, in Panama Hattie, and
Kenneth Williams has challenged.
I'm afraid hesitation.
Yes, your fear was justified. Yes, he definitely hesitated. Couldn't leave any more showstoppers. Kenneth, you have the subject and a point for a correct challenge, and 14 seconds on showstoppers, starting now.
Well, of course, Sir Peter Jones is quite right, and I do bow to his superior wisdom and knowledge in this matter.
Peter Jones has challenged.
he's just saying that.
And what is your
He doesn't
challenge?
really mean it. I mean, it's just a sort of gratuitous thing that he's saying just to keep talking.
Well, he may be, but he still didn't deviate from the subject of showstoppers, and
He
you're...
was talking about me. And
Well, you might be a showstopper.
Well, you just
for all
stopped
we
the
know.
show by pressing your buzzer, didn't you? So you're not going to say that.
All right, and you gratuitously, with your challenge, gave him a point, and he keeps the subject, and there are 8 seconds left, starting now.
It's all a misnomer because obviously the showstopper, resulting as it does in tremendous applause, does not stop the show at all. In fact, it makes it go on.
Kenneth Williams kept going, spoke when the whistle went, gained the extra point for doing so, and has taken the lead at the end of that. Oh, he's alongside Clement Freud at the end of the round. Peter Jones, will you begin the next round? The subject is judgment. Will you talk on that? 1 minute, starting now.
Judgment, yes. Well, judgment is something that every chairman should have, and what a pity it is. No, I didn't mean that, because...
Derek Nimmo has challenged.
It is a pity. I quite... So you can't... There's no deviation.
Why?
Well, you've got no judgment, have you? So, so you can't say, what a pity he hasn't got any judgment. You haven't got
If you'd been clever, Derek, and said that I had got judgment, I would have given you the point. But as you didn't say that, I give it to Peter Jones. And this is one of the occasions when I can exercise the unique position I'm in. 52 seconds, Peter, on judgment, starting now.
There aren't more like Parsons.
Derek Nimmo, challenge.
Parsons, hesitation.
Yes, I'm afraid so. My name... It's a pity you couldn't remember it. 50 seconds now with you, Derek, on judgment, starting now.
Through this very long and arduous series, I have noticed with incredible horror the lack of judgment of the said Parsons, that great, genial oaf who sits up there in disgusting pink shirts, sweating from every pore, looking like an oversexed gorilla. Ladies and gentlemen, if the BBC has any judgment whatsoever...
Clement Freud is challenged.
Repetition.
Of what?
B.
Of what?
Of what?
B.
B?
He said B, B, C.
Oh, you rotten thing, you.
I thought I was saving you from...
No, because
degree
what
of
was going to
abuse.
happen is at the end of the round I was going to cancel all Derek Nimmo's points.
He hasn't got anything.
Well, he
hasn't
said you
got
were like an
anything.
oversexed gorilla. I mean, that is rather flattering in a way.
I can't think there's anything very attractive about an oversexed gorilla. He did restrict...
I didn't say you were attractive.
It's quite attractive to an undersexed gorilla.
BBC, we've never challenged on that before, so what we'll do is we won't give any points. So give Clement a point for listening well, but leave the subject with Derek Nimmo, who's still got judgment starting
Does
now.
someone get a point for listening well, did you say?
Yes.
I nearly missed that. God, all these weeks I've been listening with my ears hanging out, or whatever they do. I mean, out on stalks. No,
Yes,
I mean...
well, I would put them away again.
And I've
if
never
you...
got a point.
Well, listen
for
well
listening.
and challenge when you've heard something to your advantage. Derek Nimmo, you have 25 seconds on judgment starting now.
Well, as I know, the judgment of the chairman is going to be when I finish.
Clement Freud is challenged.
Repetition of chairman.
Yes, indeed, right.
Well, he's a very repetitious chairman. He's been saying the same thing for weeks.
Yes, and Clement Freud, a point to you for a correct challenge, and there are 22 seconds on judgment starting now.
One of the hardest judgments that I ever had to make was in a competition to find the ending to What is the Difference Between a Mouse? And I finally awarded it to None, because he is both the same animal. This received a one-way ticket to Tibet, from which the winner emerged only last Tuesday with typhoid, malaria...
Either what a judgment or what a deviation, I don't know which. No one challenged him, he kept going, a point for speaking when the whistle went, and he's now, Clement Freud, in a commanding lead at the end of that round. Clement, your turn to begin. The subject is adulation, and would you speak on that for 60 seconds, starting now?
Adulation is something the chairman of this program is incredibly used to. Derek Nimmo and Peter Jones send him fan letters by each post, whereas Kenneth Williams, telegrams, bouquets of flowers and bottles of vintage champagne flow from Great Portland Street, where his mansion stands, to the humble dwelling occupied by La Famille.
Kenneth Williams, a challenge.
Deviation, I've never sent him nothing. What are you talking about? A load of rubbish.
I can absolutely vouch for that, Kenneth. Not a thing.
I gave you a cup of tea in my house, though.
Oh, that's right, yes, I forgot. Have you never sent anything
No,
to me?
never. Good
never.
gracious,
So-
would be beaten me out of the house alone, wouldn't it? Ludicrous.
No, that was definitely a deviation.
Yeah.
Adulation is now with you, Kenneth, and there are 36 seconds left, starting now.
This is a quality we should all pay to greatness. Yes, indeed. I am the first person to say, here is a man of quality. Alas...
Derek Nimmo has challenged.
I just seem to remember saying it yesterday, so you're the first person to say it.
Did you?
Yes.
Yes, but he said it for the first time in this round, so he
Oh,
has
I
a
see.
point and keeps the subject of adulation with 25 seconds left, starting now.
Somebody once said to Burke, you are a brilliant orator, and I pay you the adulation which is your due. He said, no, I'm just a hill in a very flat country, which, when you think about the standard of oratory in England, is pretty reasonable. In fact, I am seldom impressed by what purports to be greatness on public platforms. Mind you, there's very little of it today. And that's
The audience gave Kenneth adulation there for keeping going magnificently on the subject, finishing when the whistle went, gaining an extra point and moving into second place behind Clement Freud. And Kenneth, your turn to begin. The subject, Catherine de Medici. Would you talk about her? One of those subjects that Ian specially gives to you because he knows your historical interest and knowledge. 60 seconds, starting now.
Well, she came from Florence, I think, and was the daughter of the Duke of Urbino, and married the King of France. Now, of course, we know that one of her kids got married to Mary, Queen of Scots, but he seems to have died very young, and she and Mary didn't get on.
Clement Freud is challenged.
Repetition of Mary.
Yes, I'm afraid you said Mary before. So, Clement, a correct challenge, and you take over the subject with 37 seconds on Catherine de Medici, starting now.
As everyone knows, Catherine de Medici was born in Wapping and went to school
Peter Jones has challenged.
Absolute rubbish. Everyone doesn't know she was born in Wapping. Very few people know that.
Yes, everybody doesn't know that she was born in Wapping, Clement. There was deviation. 26.5 seconds for you, Peter, on Catherine de Medici, starting now.
I happen to know that she had the smallest waist in the world, and this is in the Guinness Book of Records, when they're describing the types of people and their vital statistics. This one is Catherine de Medici. Of course, the family was a well-known circus group who they were doing trapeze acts.
Derek Nimmo has challenged. Yes, there was a little hesitation. What a pity. I'd like to have heard about the circus group. Derek, there are nearly 11 seconds. Nearly 11, 10.5. On Catherine de Medici, starting now.
Married Henry II of France and produced 3 children. Charles IX was the one which he contained the most influence over, if you'll forgive that rather untidy sentence. And it was during the time...
At the end of that round, Derek Nimmo is equal with Peter Jones in 3rd place, 3 points behind Kenneth Williams, who's 1 point behind our leader, who is still Clement Freud. And will you begin the next round, Derek? A full life. 60 seconds, starting now.
Oh, I do think this is something we all ought to try and enjoy. Now, too many people do not enjoy a full life, I'm afraid.
And Clement Freud has challenged.
Repetition of enjoy.
Yes, you enjoyed it too much, Derek. And Clement has a correct challenge, a point on a full life, and there are 52 seconds left, starting now.
A full life, ideally, should be lived 7 days a week. Each month, year, second, hour, clocks.
Kenneth Williams, the challenge.
This is just a lot of repetition. I mean, it's nothing to do with anything. It's
He went very slowly in between, didn't he, as well?
Yes, that's right.
Yes.
That was the
So you're challenging for hesitation?
Exactly.
Well done. And you have a point, and you have 42 seconds left. A full life, Kenneth, starting now.
It's a ludicrous term. You either live or you don't live, so everyone's full in that sense. I mean, of course it's full. You cram every minute. You experience. As you go down the street, you see somebody, you take in that face, you make them register. You know,
I'm afraid Derek challenged you a long time ago.
What's he talking about?
What?
Live or don't live.
Yes, there were 2 lives, I'm afraid. He let it go for a time, and then he suddenly
Well, I
decided
thought it might be going to be
challenge.
interesting, then when it wasn't, I buzzed you.
Yes, all right. 34 seconds with you, Derek, on a full life, starting now.
Well, here we are on a cold day in the heart of the great metropolis. We ought to try and live a full life. Get out now, put your fur coats round your necks, and go out into the breathing, searing...
Kenneth Williams, the challenge.
2 hours.
Yes, and 2 breathings. Kenneth, you have a point, and you have 24 seconds on a full life, starting now.
A full life has nothing to do with all that rubbish he's on about. It is to do with developing your mental faculty. You can close your eyes and be in China. Ding dong. It's not a repetition. No, don't try it on. Ding is quite different from dong. How dare anyone maintain this? Anyone said I'm repeating?
No, Peter Jones has just challenged. We haven't heard what his challenge is yet. What is it, Peter?
You can't close your eyes and be in China. I mean, that is just stretching it too far.
He might have been in China before he closed his eyes.
In which case, he's entitled to say you can close your eyes in China.
Or close your eyes and imagine you're in China.
Ah, yes, exactly.
I think he was wishing to convey that, so I have a very difficult decision. I think either on these difficult situations, I have to put it to the audience and let you be the final judges. No, I'm going to put it to the audience because I know Kenneth was wishing to convey that you imagine you're in China.
I'll withdraw the challenge. I don't want these people
If you agree with Peter's challenge, you cheer, and if you disagree, you boo. And will you all do it together now? They're all in China with you. Right, Kenneth, you're still in China. You have a point. The audience say so. 10 seconds left, starting now.
So you open yourself up. Cast aside the inhibitions. Make yourself one with the great...
Derek Nimmo has challenged.
of yourself and make.
Yourself and make.
Yourself.
Yes, that's right. Derek, you have a point, and you have 3 seconds on a full life, starting now.
I enjoy a full life by going ice skating.
Clement Freud has challenged.
Repetition of enjoy.
Yes, you enjoyed it too much before, yes. Clement has a point, and 1 second left on a full life, starting now.
Breakfast.
We're coming towards the end of this particular show, and the subject is very apt. It may not be the last round, but the subject is last words. Peter Jones, your turn to begin. Will you go on that one for 60 seconds, starting now?
Well, the last words that people say before they move on are often very revealing, and the true character of the person is sometimes brought out. For instance, Oliver Cromwell said, "My design is to make what haste I can to be gone." I thought that was really splendid. Everybody knows about Nelson saying, "Kiss me hardy." And then there was that person who said, "Pray don't hack me as you did my Lord Monmouth." I think that was on the scaffold as he was going to be axed. I can't remember who it was. It may have been someone well known. I think it probably is likely to be. I don't know whether you can recall it.
Derek Nimmo has
Repetition of no, don't know. Very sadly.
No?
I know. No.
Yes, you did say no a lot. It's a rather wicked challenge. All right, Derek,
No,
correct one, though. And there are 16 and a half seconds on last word starting now.
Oh, goodbye, cheerio, what-ho, Hong Kong go fruit. Very nice seeing you.
Clement Freud's challenge.
Repetition of honk.
All right, 13 seconds with you, Clement, on last word starting now.
I think one of my favourite last words was the man who said, "I am beginning to feel better." And then he died. But many politicians are especially talking on their deathbeds in order that a scribe...
Clement Freud has increased his lead. Derek Nimmo in second. Kenneth Williams still in second place. Derek just behind and Peter just behind that. And Clement Freud, your turn to begin. And the subject is hot air ballooning. Would you talk on that? Quite a lot of it goes on in this program, I think. But 60 seconds starting now.
When I go hot air ballooning, the first thing I do is make up a last word which I shout to the people on the ground as I disappear into the middle distance. The trouble about hot air ballooning is you have no control over your direction. At least I do not.
Derek Nimmo has challenged.
Deviation not true. You can either go up or down.
At
You must
least
have control
I
of
do.
the direction.
That is perfectly correct, Derek. You have a good challenge and a point, and you have 43 seconds on hot air ballooning starting now.
I've only been hot air ballooning once in my life, and I found it the most...
And Peter Jones has challenged.
I don't think that entitles him to give a talk on it.
So what's your challenge?
Deviation.
No, actually, he didn't deviate from the subject on the card because even if he's only been once, and if I give him the subject, he's got to try and talk on it, even if he knows nothing about it.
Yes,
So-
I see, yes.
Yes, so I'm afraid he keeps the subject and he has a point for a wrong challenge, and there are 41 seconds left. Derek starting now.
But at the Nagasaki Beach Hotel in Corfu, and in fact they put me into this basket. Above my head was this huge great canvas thing which they'd previously pumped up with something that looked like a very large Bunsen burner. A totally lunatic fellow then climbed into the aforementioned carriage with me, and up we began to ascend towards the Albanian coast. We were free flying. Now, when it was about 11:45 at night, the Albanian, I said the word, unfortunately searchlights came on.
Advertising Albania.
Yes, you got in first on the repetition of Albania. Hot air ballooning is back with you, Clement, and there are 18 seconds left starting now.
And when you approach the sun and are carrying wax wings, it is terribly important that hot air ballooning becomes totally...
Peter Jones has challenged twice.
This is to do with flying. No, only once. Somebody else challenged. It's to
repetition
do with...
of
It's
totally.
not hot air ballooning. That's just trying to fly with wings made of wax and stuff.
Yes, and we'll give you 9 seconds on hot air ballooning starting now.
It's becoming quite a vogue, and the BBC did a marvellous series. Very highly...
Clement Freud has challenged.
Repetition of B.
Which I didn't allow last time, so Peter Jones has a point. We've accepted BBC as the title of a company, and Peter keeps going with hot air ballooning with 5 seconds left starting now.
All these multicoloured spheres wafting across the mountains and plains of...
Well, Peter Jones has moved forward. He's still in 4th place, 1 point behind Kenneth, who's 1 point behind Derek, and they're all a few points behind Clement Freud. Kenneth, your turn to begin, waving goodbye. It's a thing one shouldn't often do on the radio because the listeners can't see it very well. But would you talk on the subject with 60 seconds starting now?
I once did this with a piece of lead. I did not know, I must state categorically, that what I was waving contained the aforesaid metal. Therefore, I threw my arm out, still holding the material, and the weight of it blew me or brought me into the sea. Because I was standing, say goodbye, on a dock. Well, can you imagine the panique that took place? Well, they fished... Oh, I said, well tried.
Clement Freud is challenged.
I'm sorry, he said well tried.
Yes. I did admit it. I was very open and frank about it. I had no hesitation about covering up, did I?
You know, because you hesitated before, you said well. Clement Freud, I agree with the challenge. And our 24 seconds on waving goodbye starting now.
The last time I waved anyone goodbye was when I was employed by a corporation called the BBBB.
Kenneth Williams is challenged.
Well, he's just said you mustn't say 2 B's. No, he said all these B's.
No, he said 3 B's. He said BBB.
You said it's the initials. It doesn't matter.
I said BBC. We accept almost like a word.
I think you ought to ask him what it stands for.
What? BB
You said
before
you
Christ.
accept any
All right,
company
now.
title.
Kenneth, you have a point for a correct challenge. And you have 17 seconds on waving goodbye starting now.
It should be done with joy in your heart and a song on your lips. Gaiety should abound, because if it's the last time, you should leave them feeling happy. Isn't it the very essence of...
Derek Nimmo's challenge.
Definition of very.
Very, yes. And so I agree on that. A very tight challenge with half a second to go on waving goodbye, Derek, starting now.
These dear wonderful people, goodbye!
Well, I'm sad to say we have no more time to play Just a Minute because we do enjoy it in spite of all the things we say. In spite of what Derek Nimmo says, we do enjoy it. Peter Jones, in spite of a great flurry at one point, unfortunately finished in 4th place, a little way behind Kenneth Williams, but he was only 1 point behind Derek Nimmo, who was in 2nd place, and he was only 2 points behind this week's winner, Clement Freud. I hope you've enjoyed this edition of Just a Minute, and from all of us here, goodbye.
The chairman of Just a Minute was Nicholas Parsons. The programme was devised by Ian Messiter and produced by David Hatch.